Welcome to 19th century London. It's smoky, grimy, and smells like a bad decision. Down on a crowded street, a man is screaming, being pinned to the ground, while a crowd gathers. Then we see a huge, bloody blade held by a man with some seriously intense eyes, like mass murder intense. On the sidelines, two friends are whispering. That insane guy is actually the best doctor in London. Folks, this isn't a back alley mugging, it's a public surgery, and the man with the blade introduces himself as Dr. Liston. He tells the crowd to remember his name, because one day, they'll be begging for his help. 10 out of 10 for showmanship, folks. Kim Tae-pyong watches, very aware that he's the only Asian person in the entire crowd. But this guy's got a secret. He used to be a dude named Sung Ju-hyuk, and Sung Ju-hyuk was a general surgeon in South Korea, like a full century in the future. His life took a nosedive when he was diagnosed with cancer. He's got a month left, at most. So he goes to process the news alone by the sea. Just 1 month to live, huh? He'd worked himself to the bone to finally make professor at 38, only to die before his new business cards were printed. Well, it's not as if anyone would be sad if he died. He's an orphan with no family. Okay, sad boy era done. Time to head home. Suddenly, a loud noise makes him turn. And guess who it is? It's Truck-kun. Because apparently terminal cancer wasn't dramatic enough. Boom. His final thought is that if God exists, he's a real jerk. And then, he opens his eyes. What's this? He's in the body of a newborn. Yes, folks, he has been reborn. He is now Kim Tae-pyong in 19th century England. Fast forward a few years, his Asian features always make him a target of the local idiots. He ignores them. They decide to upgrade to violence, picking up rocks to throw. But good thing he's best friends with the richest kid in the village. What do you think you're doing to my friend? Joseph demands. He sends the losers packing, then turns to Tae-pyong, annoyed. Why do you just let them do that? He asks. But Tae-pyong just lets it slide. He does look different, after all. For a little context, Tae-pyong's parents were Korean Catholics who fled Joseon and came to England. They fell in love on the ship, conceived him, and settled down. Until today, he's still amazed they found the time on that cramped ship. Thanks to his dad landing a job with a wine company owned by a Mr. Lister, Joseph's dad, they lived pretty well. He knows his easy life is all because he's friends with rich Lister Joseph. Anyway, Joseph changes the subject. He wants to do that thing again. With a wink, he rushes to go fetch it. It's a shiny golden microscope. They head down to the sea to catch some shrimp and examine it under the microscope. Joseph is absolutely captivated by what he sees. In a world without TVs or smartphones, Tae-pyong has to admit, this is pretty great entertainment. It suddenly becomes quiet. Joseph is staring into space with a weird look. Tae-pyong, he declares, I want to become a doctor. Tae-pyong is stunned. Did he get all that just from looking at a shrimp's heart? But wait, he isn't done yet. He asks his friend if he wants to come along for the ride too. Tae-pyong is floored. Becoming a medical doctor again? In this century? It's a plot twist he never expected. Sometime later, our boys are on a road trip, 19th century style. The cart hits a bump, and Joseph's dad tells Tae-pyong to hang on tight. Jokes that they can't have him breaking his neck before he even starts medical school. Joseph just laughs, completely used to his dad's terrible jokes. Tae-pyong looks out at the scenery, admitting this is his first time leaving his tiny hometown. Turns out, Joseph went full-on dramatic mode to convince his dad to let them go. And he didn't just ask for himself, he begged his dad to sponsor Tae-pyong too. He hyped Tae-pyong up as a certified genius who would definitely pay him back later. Dad thinks it over for about 2 seconds while Tae-pyong gives him the puppy dog eyes. And just like that, he agrees. Joseph is so thrilled he gives his dad a massive hug. He even offers a full tour of London. Man, this family is just way too wholesome. Tae-pyong feels a little guilty accepting so much generosity, but hey, a free ride is a free ride. Still, he can't lie. He's pretty hyped to finally see the big city. Here it is, London, the capital of the 19th century British Empire. After being stuck in a tiny village, our reincarnated surgeon is ready for some civilization. And then, his eyes snap open. Joseph's dad points ahead and proudly announces, there it is, that's London. Tae-pyong's excitement immediately dies a horrible death. This smog-filled industrial nightmare? This is the capital city? Their welcoming party is a family of rats the size of small dogs. Then the smell hits him, and it hits him hard. Joseph's dad just laughs it off, teasing him for being a sensitive country boy. But Tae-pyong has smelled modern cities before. This is on a whole nother level. It smells like something died here, and then came back to life just to die again. As another cart rattles past, he catches a glimpse of something truly horrifying. Wait a second. Is that a dead body? He stumbles back in shock, and Joseph has to catch him. Barely able to speak, Tae-pyong asks what is going on. Joseph calmly explains that it's nothing to worry about. It's just a cadaver being supplied to the London Medical School. Supplied? That is a very weird way to put it. Joseph, however, is just excited, saying the school is famous for its dissections. Tae-pyong hopes he just misheard. They're here to supply wine, right? That's not the real problem. His 21st century surgeon brain is screaming. That body is way too decomposed to be used for a dissection. These students are going to catch a disease before they learn any anatomy. Are they seriously going to make students cut into that rotting corpse? He's having some major second thoughts about this whole medical school plan. Meanwhile, Joseph's dad is practically vibrating with excitement. He tells them to hurry up, and Joseph has no idea what's going on. Turns out, he got a hot tip from a local shopkeeper. There's a public surgery happening, and he tells them they can go watch. Taepyeong is completely baffled. Spectators for a surgery? First supplying a cadaver, now spectating a surgery. This is getting weird. These word combinations are setting off all kinds of red flags for him. But the dad just grins, thinking the country boy is about to get a huge reality check. He grabs Taepyeong, ready to educate him on the wonders of modern medicine. He proudly declares that surgery is used to save people's lives. Taepyeong's internal monologue is just screaming, "Yeah, no kidding." Just then, a man in the crowd screams that he would rather die. He's being dragged through the crowd by a couple of huge dudes. Taepyeong thinks it's a public execution, but Joseph's dad casually says, "That's the patient." Taepyeong is absolutely speechless. The what now? He looks over and sees the poor guy being held down on a wooden table. Yep, folks, welcome to 19th century surgery. The patient, understandably, is not a fan of this plan. He's screaming for his life, but the assistants just pin him down, yelling that they're trying to save him. Taepyeong watches in horror, a cold sweat breaking out as he starts to remember something. He remembers his medical history class from his past life. You know, the one he never paid attention to. Yeah, he totally crammed for that exam, thinking it was just an easy credit. Whoops. Naturally, he doesn't remember any of the important details. He decides to take a look himself. One glance is all he needs. His modern medical knowledge kicks in. The leg is severely infected and starting to rot. Yep, amputation is the only way. Suddenly, the screaming makes a lot more sense. He gets their logic, brutal as it is. Without the amputation, the guy's a goner. As he looks around, a truly horrifying thought hits him. This is a major surgery, and there is absolutely no modern equipment in sight. He turns to Joseph's dad and asks when they plan on sedating the patient. Sedate? The man looks confused, then gets an idea. Oh right, I have just the thing. And he pulls out a bottle of wine. 19th century anesthesia, folks. He hands the bottle to the assistants, who are way too eager to take it. Grab the struggling patient's jaw, and just start pouring the wine down his gullet. Taepyeong is absolutely speechless. Just like that, the patient is completely wasted and passes out. Taepyeong is losing his mind. Alcohol thins your blood. Combined with amputation bleeding, this is a death sentence. As the crowd murmurs, a new challenger approaches. A dude in a slick suit and top hat strolls through the crowd carrying a medical bag. He tips his hat, and you can just feel the over-the-top confidence. He dramatically whips off his coat and pops open his case of surgical tools. He announces, "Good day to you all. I am Dr. Liston, a professor at the University College London Medical School." Joseph whispers that this guy is the best doctor in London. Taepyeong thinks he looks more like a mob boss. Liston keeps going, basically giving the crowd a sales pitch for his services, then holds up his blade, bragging about how the marks on it prove his experience. Taepyeong leans in for a closer look and immediately regrets it. That blade is caked in old blood, fat, and bits of actual flesh. Gross. Taepyeong realizes that's a 5-star hotel for bacteria and tries to scream a warning. But before he can, some old guy in the crowd just smacks him with a cane. Taepyeong crumples, and a shocked Joseph has to catch him. The man sneers, "You should know your place." Joseph is furious and immediately gets in the guy's face. His dad shuts it down, telling them not to cause a scene. Joseph looks around and realizes this definitely isn't his safe little hometown anymore. All Taepyeong can do is look down, completely defeated. Meanwhile, the show begins. Dr. Liston orders the patient's clothes cut off. The scissors rip right through the fabric. The smell of decay is so bad, Taepyeong can smell it from way back in the crowd. Slap a tourniquet on the leg, and Taepyeong is disgusted. No gloves, no masks, not even a little cleaning. Liston barks his final orders. Tie his thigh and hold it steady. Time me. Liston presses the filthy blade against the man's thigh. Taepyeong can only watch, his eyes wide with horror. In one blindingly fast motion, he slices deep into the leg. Blood immediately goes absolutely everywhere. Taepyeong is stunned. The cut was insanely fast and precise, right through skin and muscle. He has to admit, even in the 21st century, a surgeon that fast is rare. Next up, the doctor grabs a saw for the bone. He starts sawing like a man possessed. He's going so fast he accidentally saws off his assistant's fingers. Oops, all while the pocket watch keeps on ticking. 30 seconds, and the whole thing is over. Dr. Liston holds the amputated leg high like a trophy. He flashes a grin at the crowd. Legs, arms, jaws, call me anytime. I can saw off anything in 30 seconds. The crowd goes wild. Even Joseph is impressed, but Taepyeong is horrified. Meanwhile, the patient is awake again and groaning in agony, biting down on a stick. Taepyeong turns to Joseph with a deadly serious look. Joseph, still hyped from the show, grabs him. "We have to go to medical school. Wasn't that incredible?" Impressed? Not even close. Taepyeong thinks to himself, surgery isn't a circus, you barbarians. I'm going to change everything. But that night, Taepyeong's ambition twists into a full-blown nightmare. A level 999 barbarian version of Dr. Liston appears, welcoming his new patient. He's all smiles, asking if they should start with a simple leg amputation. Taepyeong is freaking out, insisting he's perfectly fine as shadowy hands grab him. He screams for help, but the giant just raises a massive blade, ready to get to work. Thankfully, he jolts awake before things get messy. His friend Joseph looks over, concerned, asking if he had a bad dream. Blinking away the horror, Taepyeong finally realizes where he is. It was just a dream. He's safe, rattling through the grimy streets of London in a carriage. He remembers how they got into medical school, and let's just say, it wasn't on merit. Joseph's dad explains they didn't want an autograph. They wanted to enroll. Liston scoffs at the idea. Then Dad plays his trump card, a little something called a considerable donation. Suddenly, Liston's entire attitude changes. Now, they're promising young men. Just like that, they were in. No tests, no interviews, just cold, hard cash. Taepyeong feels a little dirty about it. He still can't figure out Dr. Liston. England's greatest doctor is this thirsty for a donation? He briefly wonders if the guy is secretly broke, but dismisses the thought. A little later, Joseph stops them with a piece of paper. This is it, he says. They've arrived at the boarding house the school recommended. And my friend, their welcome wagon is a fresh pile of poop right on the doorstep. Taepyeong's first thought is that it's a hate crime. Is it because he's Asian, or because Joseph's a Quaker? Then he sees another dude just going against a nearby wall. The horrifying truth dawns on him. Nope. This is just Tuesday in 19th century London. They find their room, and it's about as glamorous as you'd expect. Joseph cheerfully calls it cramped, which is the understatement of the century. Taepyeong spots grimy sheets and a rat for a roommate. Then the smell hits him, that unmistakable, wafting stench of outdoor plumbing. He's only been gone a day, and he's already desperately homesick for clean air. He figures if this is bad for him, it must be torture for a rich kid like Joseph. But nope, Joseph is absolutely beaming, completely unfazed by the squalor. He turns to Taepyeong, full of excitement. Aren't you excited? This is where it all begins. Bro starts getting all poetic about their future as doctors. He declares their memoirs should start with this exact, cramped, threadbare room. He's completely serious. A fine introduction, wouldn't you say? Taepyeong just stares. This guy's optimism is on another level. He smiles. His name, Taepyeong, actually means free of worries, but it clearly fits Joseph better. He brings them back to reality. Let's focus on not failing first. Our first class is tomorrow. That night, Taepyeong lies awake, convinced they'll die of plague before they even graduate. Next day, they arrive at the surprisingly grand London Medical School. Walking through the halls, they share a determined look, ready for their first day. They exchange a firm nod before stepping into the lecture hall. They walk into a large classroom, and it is packed. Instantly, all eyes are on Taepyeong. The whispers start immediately. An Asian? What's he doing here? Great start to the semester. But Joseph, ever the Chad, confidently introduces himself as Joseph Lister. Taepyeong hangs back, letting his friend take the lead in this situation. He's learned the hard way that being a forward Asian man usually earns him a fist to the face. Joseph introduces his friend Taepyeong, but says everyone can call him Pyong. He clarifies that even though his parents are from Joshin, Pyong is a born and raised Englishman. And right on cue, some rich-looking jerk stands up to mock him. Taepyeong isn't even surprised. There's always one of these guys. But Joseph isn't having it. His friendly vibe vanishes instantly. Clenching his fist, he calls the guy out for not being a proper gentleman. Taepyeong tries to calm him down, whispering that the dude is clearly some rich heir. He reminds Joseph that Daddy isn't here to bail them out of trouble this time. The arrogant student just doubles down, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I suppose we should call monkeys Englishmen then, he sneers. And that does it. Joseph's eye starts twitching. He is about to throw down. Taepyeong tries to grab his arm, willing him to stop. But before things could escalate, a massive shadow falls over them, and the entire room goes silent. It is the one and only Dr. Liston, and my friend, he does not look happy. Everyone freezes in place. And just like that, the dude's entire personality flips. He goes from bully to bootlicker in 0.2 seconds. He gives a deep bow, all smiles and politeness. Taepyeong can only watch, impressed. This guy is a professional suck-up. Liston introduces Joseph and Pyong. Joseph is still glaring holes into the two-faced rat. Liston then introduces the bully. Turns out his name is Colin, and he is one of the top students. But Taepyeong notices something. Colin is not just acting polite. He is genuinely terrified of Dr. Liston. With the drama over, Liston slams a book down. It is time for class to begin. He starts with a cheerful warning. He has no idea how many of them will even graduate. His only advice is to pray and study hard. Yikes. Taepyeong is confused. Does he just mean failing tests? He looks around and sees every other student is sweating bullets. Liston begins his lecture on anatomy. He explains that it is crucial knowledge, but hard to use in surgery. Taepyeong doesn't get it. It is because of sedation, Dr. Liston announces. It does not matter if you use booze or knock them out. The patient will wake up the second you cut them. And suddenly, it all clicks for Taepyeong. sedation. This was never a problem in the 21st century. Anesthesia was always a given. He realizes modern anesthetics do not exist here. That is why the surgery in the square was so rushed and brutal. If a surgeon pauses, the patient dies from pain, Liston roars. You must be as fast as possible. And to really drive the point home, he punches the chalkboard, shattering it. Students are terrified. Taepyeong gets the message loud and clear. Learn this stuff, or Liston will beat it into you. Liston starts the lesson on the thigh. Despite the dramatics, Taepyeong has to admit this guy knows his stuff. The man is an obsessive expert. He's a huge surprise. In the square, he looked like a butcher, but in the classroom, he is a genius. Lecture over, it is time for hands-on practice. Liston tells everyone to follow him and hands out cotton balls. Taepyeong is shocked. They are just pre-meds. Are they really doing a dissection on day one? As they walk down the stairs, a horrible smell hits them. Taepyeong immediately gags. The disgusting smell is coming from behind a set of huge double doors. Liston calmly tells them to stuff the cotton in their noses. This, he says, is the dissection room. The doors open to a literal chamber of horrors. And get this, Liston calls it sanitary. Sanitary? Bro, the room is swarming with flies and maggots. It is anything but sanitary. Taepyeong realizes what is wrong. Formalin does not exist yet. These bodies are actively rotting. Without even hesitating, Liston grabs a corpse's thigh with his bare hand and slices it open. Taepyeong's stomach lurches. The man just touched a rotting body with his bare hands. This place is a cesspool of germs. He glances at Joseph, who is pale and shaking. Oh no. Joseph bolts from the room and starts throwing up outside. Taepyeong follows to check on him. Taepyeong tells him it is a normal reaction. But Joseph feels weak, saying Taepyeong handled it just fine. Taepyeong cannot exactly tell him about his past life as a surgeon, so he just says the others have more experience. Still, he is proud of his friend. The fact that Joseph did not pass out shows how tough he really is. Just then, two upperclassmen walk out. One of them is clutching a bleeding hand. His friend asks if he is okay. The injured student Alfred brushes it off as just a small nick. His friend just tells him to stop the bleeding and come back. Taepyeong walks over. Excuse me, he asks. Did you get cut while dissecting? Alfred laughs. Yeah, my knife slipped while I was cutting into the abdomen. So embarrassing. A cold dread washes over Taepyeong. This guy has an open wound after touching a rotting corpse with his bare hands. And it all makes sense. Liston's warning about not graduating. He was not talking about failing classes. The students are dying. They are dying from infections. And if Taepyeong does not do something, this guy is next. Just as this chilling realization hits him, a man wheels a rattling cart towards the London Medical School. He calls out to a waiting professor, pulling back the sheet to reveal the feet of two fresh corpses. The professor notes they're not even cold yet. The delivery man just grins, confirming they're warm and fresh. But the dissection tables are full, so the professor says he'll only take one today. The man just bows, happy for the business. As he wheels the other body away, he cheerfully calls out, God bless you. Suddenly, his cart hits a rock, and the sheet slides right off the remaining corpse. And who happens to see this whole sketchy exchange? Our boy Taepyeong. The sight brings back Dr. Liston's warning about students dying during dissection practice. He's horrified. So this is what they meant by corpses being delivered. He flashes back to the rope marks on the neck, like he was just murdered. Don't these people care where this man gets his corpses? Alfred notices him staring and asks if he wanted to talk about something. Taepyeong quickly snaps out of it, trying to play it cool. He says he was just distracted by the creepy guy who passed by. Alfred just smiles and explains, oh, him? He's the one who delivers the cadavers. Yeah, he looks a bit scary. He says he heard the guy just collects unclaimed bodies. But Taepyeong knows better. This guy is making the bodies himself. He now understands the horrifying truth. The corpses are sourced from literally anywhere. That means these students are digging into bodies that died from who knows what, all while having open cuts on their hands. Alfred asks if this is his first dissection. Taepyeong can only think, dude, stop smiling. You're already halfway to the grave. He has to save him. He urges Alfred to get his wound treated, but Alfred just shrugs it off, saying the bleeding has stopped. Taepyeong insists it is not the bleeding he is worried about. But how does he explain germ theory to a guy from the 19th century? He gives it a shot, saying that decomposing bodies carry germs that can infect wounds. Hold up, an image of an angry mob screaming heretic and burning him at the stake while calling him Asian Satan. Bad idea. He has to warn him without mentioning germs. He also wonders if they would even believe an Asian man in this era. Thinking about this gives him a genius idea. He's got it. He puts on an air of mystery and begins, you know, I'm actually from the East. Alfred's eyes light up. So that's it. I thought you had jaundice. The ignorance is alive and well in this age. Alfred then asks where he is from, since he does not look Indian. Taepyeong is a little surprised, but hey, at least the guy is not dismissing him. That is a good sign. He figures that for a guy from this time period, Alfred is actually pretty decent. He clarifies that he is from Joseon and pivots back to the important part. Where I'm from, we never touch a corpse with a wounded hand. He keeps the lie going, saying it is believed that doing so leads to death. He silently apologizes to his ancestors for the fibe. Alfred is skeptical. Are you saying I will be cursed? That sounds like superstition, not science. Taepyeong can't believe he is being called unscientific by a 19th century dude. He quickly backpedals, saying it's not a curse but something else. He closes his eyes and thinks hard. Come on, 21st century brain, you have to save this guy's life. Then he lands on the perfect word. They say, the corpse releases bad energy. Both Alfred and Joseph jolt, repeating the word in confusion. Energy? Taepyeong leans into it, claiming that corpses release malignant energy, which enters through wounds. Operation Eastern Mysticism is officially launched, folks. But internally, he's cringing. Using the word energy because he can't say germs is destroying his pride as a modern doctor. Alfred thinks it over. Energy. Then he nods. That actually does make sense. Taepyeong is shocked. He actually bought it? So curses are superstition, but energy is science? Whatever, man. He's got no choice but to roll with it. He doubles down, saying he once saw someone in his homeland die after touching a corpse. He starts describing the symptoms. Redness and swelling at the wound. Alfred gasps and looks down at his own hand. Taepyeong continues, detailing how the whole body swells before the person loses consciousness and dies a painful death. He looks Alfred dead in the eye and says, "So right now, you are in serious danger." Alfred stares, completely horrified. After a long moment, he admits that he has seen those exact symptoms before. He confesses that a classmate who also practiced dissection had the same thing happen to him. In fact, several students die like that every single year. He always just thought the air in the dissection room was bad. He never would have imagined it was due to some kind of malignant energy. He panics and asks Taepyeong what he should do. First, wash your hand in flowing water, Taepyeong instructs calmly. Alfred immediately runs to the campus fountain, but Taepyeong stops him. The fountain flows right from the disgusting Thames River. Taepyeong says they need clean water. Boiled water would be good, but strong alcohol would be even better. He asks Alfred if he can get his hands on any. Alfred nods, saying he should have some at his home. He then begs, "Would you please accompany me home and help remove this malignant energy?" Taepyeong beams and agrees, thinking to himself that he has somehow become a full-fledged exorcist. He asks where he lives. The answer? Kensington. Taepyeong's jaw just about hits the floor. Kensington is one of the richest, most exclusive neighborhoods in the entire city. This guy is from some serious old money. Just then, an absolutely beautiful horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the street. Taepyeong stares in complete disbelief. He takes a private carriage to school? He totally reevaluates his new friend. Alfred did not seem like much at first glance. But is it possible this kid was super rich? Taepyeong steps inside and his jaw hits the floor. This isn't a house, it's basically a palace. Even Joseph, the richest kid back in their hometown, is speechless. This is a whole different tier of wealth. Alfred explains, almost offhand, that while his brothers went into the family business, he was the one who chose medical school instead. Taepyeong gets it immediately. Even when you're mega rich, the younger sons still have something to prove. Alfred turns out to be a genuinely good guy about it too, introducing them to the staff and making sure everyone treats Taepyeong with respect. Still, Taepyeong can't quite wrap his head around it. Why would someone this rich choose to spend his life dissecting corpses? There's no time to dwell on that though. Taepyeong snaps into work mode. We need to move fast. Bring me everything I asked for. First up, boiled water. Except the pot they hand him is so filthy he actually recoils. He barks at the maids to scrub it clean, then boil it again. Twice, apparently, is the minimum standard here. He explains patiently that they need to kill the germs in the water first, then let it cool before it's safe to use. Next, he rigs up a makeshift distiller for the alcohol. Honestly, the man's kind of a genius when he wants to be. He carefully collects the condensation, explaining that this will make the alcohol far more effective for disinfecting. Alfred, completely lost, just asks where on earth he learned to do all this. Without missing a beat, Taepyeong puts on his most mysterious face. In Choseon, Operation Eastern Mysticism is in full swing, and Joseph buys it completely. Wow, Yuseon really is an extraordinary nation. Showtime. Taepyeong preps to disinfect the wound, warning Alfred that it'll sting just a little. Alfred braces himself, gripping his arm, insisting he can handle it. He can't. Taepyeong scrubs the cut properly, and Alfred lets out a scream that probably rattled the windows. After that first burst of agony, his hand won't stop trembling. Taepyeong tells him calmly that the sharp pain will fade into numbness soon. Alfred just wants to know why. What he's actually thinking is because the alcohol is killing your tissue, but saying that out loud feels like a bad idea. So he sticks with the script instead. The malevolent energy is being driven out, and somehow, they're all buying it. Taepyeong knows full well this is a gamble. Rubbing alcohol can damage healthy tissue too. But against a potentially fatal infection, it's a risk worth taking. He wraps up, telling Alfred to clean the wound daily. Alfred groans at the idea of round 2. Then Alfred has an idea. What if Taepyeong and Joseph just stayed at the house while he recovers? Taepyeong can barely believe his luck. Trade their rat-infested boarding house for an actual mansion? Sign him up. His face lights up instantly. Of course, I'll treat you as many times as it takes. Alfred's so relieved he suggests 2 weeks, just to be safe. The gratitude is almost embarrassing. That night settling in, Taepyeong is practically giddy. Joseph, we did it. No more sleeping in that rat nest. Walking down a hallway lined with priceless art, his mind is already working the angles. There has to be a way to make this stay permanent. Then something on a table catches his eye. A Goryo Celadon, an actual Korean national treasure, just sitting there. Next to it, something lumpy and unfamiliar. He picks it up and realizes it's raw, unprocessed rubber. Joseph explains Alfred's father brought it back as a sample. Nobody in the house has any idea what it's actually for. Taepyeong's brain immediately starts sprinting. Rubber. Here, he could make surgical gloves out of this. Joseph, unfortunately, isn't done. So what was that exactly about learning all this in Joseon? Points out, not unkindly, that Taepyeong was born in England and has never once left their hometown. Busted. Taepyeong tries to come up with an excuse, but Joseph gets it. Never mind, he mutters. I'm used to it by now. You've been saying weird things since we were kids. He drifts back to a childhood memory, scraping his knee and panicking, convinced he was bleeding to death. Young Taepyeong had calmly cleaned the wound, mumbling something about antibiotic ointment, whatever that was supposed to mean. He'd explained gently that it wasn't a deep cut and would heal fine as long as it stayed clean. He grinned and said, if you're hurt, we can always fix it. Back in the present, Joseph's expression softens. He doesn't understand his friend, but he trusts him anyway. Well, I'm sure you had your reasons. He pats Taepyeong's shoulder. Let me know if you need help. Taepyeong's genuinely touched by that. But before he can say anything back, Alfred comes rushing in, looking pale. He holds out his hand. I think it's swelling. It looks exactly like my friend's wound, right before he died. Alfred's panic immediately kicks into overdrive. His swollen hand looks identical to his dead friend's wound. He completely breaks down, sobbing and asking Taepyeong if he's about to die too. While Alfred spirals into a full meltdown, Taepyeong calmly calls him back up. Without a word, Joseph walks over and puts the man in a sleeper hold. Problem solved. Taepyeong takes a closer look, pressing on the wound. Alfred yelps in pure agony. The diagnosis is instant, and it's not good. The wound is badly infected. Taepyeong grimaces. Back in his old life, a simple antibiotic shot would have handled this. Here, they're completely out of luck. He rolls up his sleeves, grim determination settling over his face. We need a knife. Joseph and Alfred both freeze. Pure terror written all over their faces. Tears well up in Alfred's eyes as he asks the question he's dreading. A knife? You're going to amputate? He starts wailing about losing his finger, but Taepyeong's patience is already gone. I'm not cutting it off, you fool. Just get me the knife. Still reeling from the insult, Alfred gets dragged to the kitchen by Joseph. Field surgery apparently starts now. In the dark, candlelit kitchen, the household staff just stare, completely bewildered by whatever's happening. Alfred gets slammed onto the kitchen table, crying like a baby who just found out about vegetables. Taepyeong approaches armed with a kitchen knife and a fork. Not exactly a surgeon's toolkit. He knows it's a downgrade. A scalpel and tweezers replaced by dinnerware. Small mercy though, at least this knife is clean. Unlike the blood-crusted blade a certain Dr. Liston likes to use. He turns to the staff. Bring the alcohol I prepared, and help hold him steady. Dead serious now, he tells them. This is a matter of life or death. He makes a bold promise. He's not just saving Alfred's life, he's saving the finger too. This will hurt a little, he says, face half in shadow, but don't be afraid. Alfred, sweating buckets, has a reasonable question. How am I supposed to not be afraid right now? Step 1. Disinfection. Taepyeong pours alcohol over the wound and his tools, and Alfred screams accordingly. Step 2. He uses the fork to pry the wound open for a better look. Brutal, but effective. Peering inside, he sees the muscle, a sickly pale pink that shouldn't be there. It's not the healthy red it's supposed to be, and the smell says it all. His first disinfection wasn't enough. He miscalculated. This is a corpse-borne infection, the kind no modern doctor back home would ever see in practice. He looks Alfred dead in the eyes. You need to endure this, Alfred whimpers. It's going to hurt even more, Taepyeong warns. The knife comes down. Alfred lets out a scream that could wake the dead. He cuts away every last bit of rotting muscle, working until the yellow pus is gone entirely. Doing this without anesthesia feels awful, but all he can do now is hope he wasn't too late. Hours later, it's finally over. Taepyeong and Joseph collapse onto a couch, completely wiped. Taepyeong asks about Alfred. Joseph says he's resting, having screamed his voice completely raw. Joseph thinks the wound should be bandaged up, worried about leaving it open. But Taepyeong explains the servant's bandages were filthy. Leaving it open is actually the safer call. Wrapping it in those rags, he says, would just invite the infection right back. When Joseph asks what pus actually is, Taepyeong starts casually explaining white blood cells and bacteria. Then he catches himself. That's exactly the kind of talk that gets a guy burned at the stake around here. Quick pivot. Back to the trusty Eastern mysticism excuse, something about the body's defenses against malicious energy. When your body's good energy fights off the bad energy, he explains, the leftover casualties are what you call pus. At least, that's what we believe in Joseon, he finishes, with a smile that is somehow both convincing and drenched in flop sweat. And Joseph buys it completely, nodding along about how deep these Joseon philosophers must be. Taepyeong can't believe how easy this is. Joseph praises the work, genuinely impressed. Taepyeong tries to play it cool, but something unfamiliar creeps in. He looks down at his hands. He just performed surgery with a kitchen knife and somehow actually pulled it off. Even in this new body, the skill's still there. Years as a surgeon left muscle memory that doesn't just disappear. For the first time, something like real hope sparks in his chest. Maybe he actually can change this era for the better. The hope doesn't last long. Back at the hospital, a stern professor tells the new students to stay quiet and just watch. Today's lesson, he announces, a lovely little procedure called bloodletting. The room goes visibly pale. Taepyeong can't believe what he's hearing. Wait, what? Why on earth are they taking blood from a patient? The patient on the floor is shaking uncontrollably, clutching his stomach in absolute agony. A pompous-looking doctor watches the man's sweat buckets and has the nerve to say, "That's a good sign." Good sign? Taepyeong's brain just short-circuited. The man is breaking out in a cold sweat. From his 21st century knowledge, this could be anything from cancer to malaria. A whole list of terrible, life-ending possibilities. The old-timey doctor, however, just confidently whips out this bizarre-looking multi-tool. Taepyeong stares, completely dumbfounded. It's a multi-purpose knife where every single tool is just another blade. Quick history lesson, folks. Humorism, an ancient Greek theory that the body has 4 fluids, and they still believe it in the 19th century. Because of this crackpot theory, they think draining bad blood is a legitimate treatment. Absolute madness. The doctor picks a blade from his collection, declaring, "This size should do." He brags about studying in France and tells the students to watch a real doctor at work. Then he leans over the patient and lines up the blade right over the man's stomach. He takes a small wooden bat and taps the back of the blade. And then, bam! He drives it straight into the man's gut. No hesitation. Blood splatters everywhere, even hitting Taepyeong's notepad as he just watches in pure horror. This barbaric tool is called a phleem. Its entire purpose is to stab patients and make them bleed out. Taepyeong is reeling. Did he just stab the guy's stomach without even aiming? Without disinfecting the blade? Did he even wipe it? Other students are actually eating this up, thinking blood just pooled in the guy's stomach. Taepyeong is internally screaming, "No! Do not learn from this quack." Suddenly, a figure looms up behind him. It's our favorite psycho doc, Liston. Taepyeong flinches, thinking a literal murderer just walked in. But the blood-soaked doctor just casually notes that the students are observing. The first doctor explains the patient has had abdominal pain for a week, and Liston agrees. He asks if they gave the patient opium, and it clicks for Taepyeong. That's why the patient's pupils were so unfocused. The doctor says they did, but the pain just comes roaring back. He suggests draining more blood, but Taepyeong has seen enough. He raises his hand. "Pardon me, might I examine the patient?" Both doctors just stare at him. The first one scoffs, asking what a rookie student could possibly do. Before Taepyeong can reply, Alfred jumps in to back him up. "Professor, he's from Chosun in the Far East. Their medicine is quite advanced." Doctor scoffs again. "The Far East? What could they possibly know about medicine?" Taepyeong just smiles, but in his head he's like, "At least we don't go around bleeding patients for no reason." He just says that their medicine is far from basic, and they even share knowledge with the Chinese Empire. Okay, that gets his attention. The mention of the Chinese Empire actually makes the doctor think for a second. Blood-splattered doctor shrugs and says it can't hurt to let him take a look. The first doctor smugly agrees, probably thinking it'll be funny to watch him fail. He gives Taepyeong permission to proceed. Taepyeong thanks him and rolls up his sleeves. It is time to show them how a real examination is done. He starts by bending the patient's knees and properly exposing his abdomen. The last guy did not even bother to take the man's shirt off before stabbing him. The patient groans, asking why they are letting a student near him. Taepyeong tells him to hold still, trying not to be insulted. Taepyeong presses on the man's stomach and asks where it hurts. The patient screams, "My stomach, you fool." Taepyeong calmly asks for more detail. Upper, middle, or lower part? The patient thinks for a second, then says, "The lower?" The bloody doctor watches with intense curiosity as Taepyeong asks if the pain is more to the left or right. Now that he has a better idea of the location, Taepyeong begins to press down. Patient grunts when he applies pressure, but when he suddenly lets go, the man lets out a massive scream of agony. Rebound tenderness. Bingo. That is the sign. This man's insides must be an absolute war zone. The pain started a week ago. Even something simple like appendicitis would be lethal if left untreated for that long. To make things worse, that quack has been draining his blood with a filthy, unsterilized tool. He has probably caused a secondary infection. The bloody doctor is amazed. What a novel method. Checking exactly where it hurts. He vows to use this technique himself. Taepyeong can hardly believe it. This guy hasn't even been asking patients where they hurt? What kind of doctor is he? He looks back at the patient and realizes his condition is critical. It might already be too late to save him. There is only one option left. He takes a breath and turns to the doctors. He looks them dead in the eye and asks, "How about we try opening his abdomen?" One of the other students immediately shouts, "You must be jesting." The bloodied doctor absolutely explodes. That would kill him. It is forbidden. A sensible surgeon does not operate on the abdomen. And just like that, they shut him down completely. In the end, there was nothing he could do. Later, riding in a carriage, Taepyeong thinks about why abdominal surgery is so deadly here. It is because these doctors poke around inside people with dirty, unsterilized instruments. Even rinsing tools with water or fire is not enough. He washes his own hands with soap, but is that clean enough to perform surgery? Man, what he would not give for a pair of sterile gloves from his past life right now. Fabric or leather gloves would just make things worse. For surgery, gloves need to be waterproof at the absolute minimum. And then, a memory hits him like a lightning bolt. He remembers Alfred telling him about some strange sample his father brought back from his travels. A lump of raw rubber he saw at Alfred's mansion a few days ago. That is it. A spark of hope suddenly ignites in his mind. Is it possible? Could he actually make the gloves himself? Fueled by his brilliant idea, Taepyeong rushes to Alfred's mansion at once. He needs to get his hands on that rubber sample. But as they pull up, the place is buzzing with activity. Joseph looks around, confused, and asks what's going on. An older butler steps forward, informing them that a huge banquet is about to get underway. A banquet? Taepyeong is floored. You mean like the fancy parties he's only ever seen in movies? His mind immediately jumps to some high society movie scene, picturing men in tuxedos and women in elegant gowns. But Alfred just laughs it off, telling him to chill out. Nah, this isn't some fancy socialite ball. It's just a boring business gathering hosted by his dad. Later, as Taepyeong gently checks the bandage on Alfred's hand, a sudden knock echoes through the room. The door swings open, and a well-built man in a sharp suit steps inside. Taepyeong is taken aback. This guy is an absolute unit. He looks more like a soldier than a businessman, almost like Dr. Liston's brother. Alfred quickly introduces his friends, Taepyeong and Joseph, to his father. The man greets them with a smile, but his eyes immediately lock onto Taepyeong. I'm told you treated Alfred's wound? Joseph tries to downplay it, but Alfred isn't having any of it. He practically saved me, father. Alfred's father nods grimly, well aware of how many medical students die. Then he remarks that he didn't know Josian was so advanced in medicine. That comment completely floors Taepyeong. He's never met anyone in this era who even knows what Chosian is. He figures the guy must be in the trade business. Still, it feels pretty good not to be treated like a total alien for once. Alfred's father extends a hand, formally inviting them to the banquet, and then he drops a bombshell. Prince Kim. Taepyeong just shakes his hand and laughs, but then the title finally registers. Wait, what did he just say? Prince Kim? His mind flashes to a hilarious image of himself sitting on a golden throne with a crown. Hilarious. He overhears the staff whispering, and it all clicks. Alfred's well-meaning praise has snowballed into a massive misunderstanding. He quickly tries to correct the record, insisting he's just a regular guy and not worthy of a title like that. Alfred's father just smiles, thinking it's royal modesty. Ah, I understand. Very well, Lord Kim it is. Taepyeong just gives up. I mean, Lord is still a huge step up, but he figures it's better than Prince. Besides, he knows from his future life that Joseon is ruled by the Yi dynasty. The Kim dynasty is a completely different beast from up north. Just then, a servant announces that the guests have arrived, and Alfred's father excuses himself. Once he's gone, Alfred turns to them with a grin. So, want to go see what the banquet's like? Joseph politely declines, laughing that they'd be out of place. He guesses they're probably just playing cards anyway. Taepyeong jokes along, asking if it's some kind of home gambling den, admitting he's not much of a gambler. Then, a light bulb goes off in his head. The most powerful businessmen in all of London are in that room. He whips around to face Alfred. Do you think I could pitch a business idea to them? The scene shifts to an opulent room filled with cigar smoke, where powerful men are drinking and playing cards. And then, the door creaks open as Alfred leads Taepyeong and Joseph straight into the lion's den. The three of them step into the room, their expressions dead serious. It's time to get to work. Alfred's father spots them instantly. Lord Kim, you came. Proudly introduces Taepyeong as a nobleman from Joseon who's here to study their culture. The businessmen actually seem to know about Joseon, mostly as a place they get ginseng from. Not bad. Taepyeong is relieved. For once, they aren't staring at him like a circus animal. Maybe, just maybe, they'll actually listen to his idea. He steps forward, taking center stage. I'd like to propose a business idea. He confidently places the lump of raw rubber on the table, explaining its incredible potential. He tells them it's lightweight and totally waterproof. His big pitch? What do you think about making gloves with it? One of the men scoffs, but Taepyeong explains that infections from dissection are a huge killer for medical students. If there was a glove that could protect the hands, he insists, it could save countless doctors. But the men are totally unimpressed. One asks why not just use leather, and another suggests steel would be stronger. They dismiss the idea entirely, questioning if there's even a market for something so niche. They just don't see the profit. Taepyeong is at a complete loss. He's sweating now. How can he possibly explain modern medicine to people who have zero concept of germs or hygiene? He needs a better angle, a product that screams profit, something else made from thin rubber. And then it hits him. He quickly pivots. The gloves were just one example. I have another idea that'll be much more profitable. He pauses for dramatic effect before dropping the ultimate bombshell. Condoms. Joseph literally spits his drink. Joseph looks like he wants the floor to swallow him whole, but Taepyeong barrels on. totally unfazed. He explains they could prevent diseases and illegitimate children. Sailors and nobles would pay a fortune for that kind of security. He knows the same tech can be used for his gloves later, but right now, the businessmen are finally listening. Their greed is peaked. The entire atmosphere in the room has shifted. "Now then, gentlemen of commerce, let me see your interest," he silently prays. And just like that, the mood in the room flips. Taepyeong's completely unhinged pitch about condoms of all things actually lands. One of the businessmen practically leaps out of his chair, already naming a chemist with a factory ready to go. Even Alfred's dad is beaming, praising the brilliant idea from, quote, Lord Kim. Taepyeong never quite got around to mentioning he's not actually a noble. Honestly? Working out fine without that detail. Let's be real, they're only listening because they think he's royalty. Walking back to school, he feels a flicker of guilt about the lie. Then he spots a familiar face. Oh great, Colin, the smug jerk from day one. Colin glances back with a little smirk, and just like that, the guilt evaporates completely. Yep, keeping the Lord Kim title. Want me to give him a good punch? Joseph interrupts his thoughts. They have no idea who this guy is. Alfred explains. Colin, one of the top new students. Oh, this kid actually got in because of his brain. And not because he bribed his way in? Shocked Pikachu. Turns out Colin's family are direct business rivals of Alfred's father. No wonder the tension. Wait, if his family rivals Alfred's, that means Colin's loaded too. Taepyeong tells Joseph to just drop it. Probably not the best idea to punch another obscenely rich kid. He changes the subject fast. They're late for clinical training at the maternity ward. Alfred proudly calls the school the best in London. Taepyeong already has a bad feeling about this. The best, huh? What they walk into is pure chaos. A massive room packed wall-to-wall with women in labor. Nurse, doing her best, tells one patient to just hang on a little longer. Taepyeong's stunned. There must be 30 patients crammed in here. Back home, 6 beds to a room felt crowded. A man claps his hands sharply, demanding attention. This is Professor James Blundell, and he's hailing this a light day. He reminds the room that lives are on the line. Joseph mutters that the man's a bit obsessive, though honestly, fair enough given the chaos. The professor announces they're starting immediately. A patient's about to deliver, right now. Taepyeong's no expert, but he can already tell this woman is in serious trouble. She needs help immediately. Blundell starts the lesson by ripping the sheet clean off the patient in front of everyone. What is he doing? You can't just do that without asking. A curtain would be nice. In this packed room, there's exactly zero privacy. Even her husband just stands there, doing nothing. Apparently, that's just how it worked back then. The professor explains a manual exam is needed. The baby's head is large, so an incision might be next. Okay, Taepyeong thinks. Maybe he knows what he's doing. He's just trying to help. Probably. Blundell mentions you can feel when the baby's about to emerge, and shoves his bare, unwashed hand straight inside her. Taepyeong's blood runs cold. Did he seriously just do that, barehanded, after her water already broke? He remembers Dr. Liston's lecture on childbed fever, a mysterious illness where, once it starts, all you can do is pray. Liston's actual explanation for it? Pure luck. Luck? That's insane. The man just delivered a payload of germs directly into her body. The woman screams, ready to deliver, and the professor goes in for another check. Taepyeong can't just stand there and watch. He has to stop this, now. Before he can do anything, the patient kicks out in pain and sends him flying. There's a massive crash. Everything goes dark. His eyes open again. Joseph, Alfred, and Dr. Liston are all staring down at him. Liston asks if he's awake, and Taepyeong immediately panics, convinced it's the amputation nightmare all over again. Liston just deadpans that he only hit his head. Oh, that's mortifying. Liston's not impressed, muttering something about Taepyeong's, quote, delicate nature, if one kick can knock him out cold. Ignoring the insult, Taepyeong asks about the patient. Alfred says she delivered safely and was moved. Relief, or is it? He knows the real danger. The infection won't show up for a while yet. And Joseph points at his back. Hey Pyong, you've got a maggot on you. He yelps, finding even more on his jacket and completely loses it, demanding to know why there are maggots on the bed. Alfred explains, unbothered. The bed was just moved over from the dissection room, where they keep the cadavers. Taepyeong's head snaps up in horror. They're storing dead bodies right next to the maternity ward? Pure nightmare fuel, folks. And it gets worse. Alfred casually mentions the bed Taepyeong's been using as a hand-me-down from the corpse in the dissection room. Taepyeong, trying not to vomit, asks if they at least change the sheets. The answer? Only if the new patient brings their own. The sheer lack of basic hygiene in the 19th century is hitting him like a truck. He realizes most of the poor women in this ward can't afford to bring their own bedding. And honestly, in an era where doctors think germs are a myth, why would they even think to ask? But then, Taepyeong gets a devious idea. Bro is about to cook. He takes off his coat and offers it to them. Would you mind smelling this? One of them takes a hesitant sniff, immediately gags. They tell him to use some cologne, but Taepyeong says they're missing the point. He looks them dead in the eye. That smell. It's the same exact stench as the pus from Alfred's hand. The light bulb goes off for Alfred. Now that you mention it, Taepyeong presses his advantage. So, isn't it likely the particles from that pus are now on my clothes and these sheets? He has to use the word particles, because explaining germ theory to these guys would be like explaining TikTok to a dinosaur. And it seems like the message is finally starting to land. But Alfred interrupts with a question. If these corpse particles are everywhere, why aren't people dropping dead all the time? Taepyeong almost says immune system, but catches himself. He points out that their skin protects them, but Alfred's infection started with a cut. He explains that skin is like a wall, but if there's a crack, the bad stuff gets in. Joseph, bless his heart, pipes up. But pregnant women don't have torn skin. You can literally see a blood vessel pop in Taepyeong's forehead. You think the baby just teleports out? He starts whacking Joseph in pure frustration, in his imagination, of course. He calms down and spells it out. When her water breaks, that means something inside has torn, and Joseph finally gets it. Taepyeong lays out his master plan. Use clean sheets, and for the love of all that is holy, wash your hands. But Alfred, ever the man of science, remains skeptical. He argues they rely on observation and inductive reasoning. To him, a doctor's dirty, bloody hands are a badge of honor, proof of hard work. What the? He dismisses Taepyeong's idea, saying, we don't wash our hands and we're fine. Taepyeong realizes talk is cheap. If these guys take pride in being walking petri dishes, he needs cold, hard proof. Then it hits him. Joseph's own argument is the key. Statistics. If they want inductive reasoning, he'll give them all the data they can handle. He immediately turns to the head honcho, Dr. Liston. Can I check out the other rooms in the maternity ward? Liston is surprised for a second. Then he grins, impressed by his zeal. He gives him the green light. Perfect. Taepyeong's new mission is to find just one doctor in this entire hospital who washes their hands. But after searching all day and into the night, his hope dwindles. He finds absolutely no one, not a single soul. He's defeated. How can not even one doctor wash their hands? Do they even clean them after using the toilet? He rages, venting it all out on poor Alfred's hand. He even checked other hospitals, and if theirs is bad, the others are straight up nightmare fuel. Dozens of women were crammed into stinking rooms on filthy beds. And the worst part? To stop the women from ending it all in that hellscape, their solution was to put the windows too high to jump from. Genuinely brilliant problem-solving, folks. Those callous morons. Taepyeong see this. If people want to die, maybe, just maybe, improve the conditions. He sighs, exhausted. How long will it take for basic common sense to become common knowledge? He's been reduced to boiling regular sewing thread to use as sutures. He knows he'd be sued into the Stone Age for this back in his own time. Suddenly, the door opens. A woman asks where the expectant mother is. Taepyeong is confused. He asks if Alfred's mother is expecting, since he's never seen her. Alfred just gives a soft, sad smile. My mother died giving birth to me. Oof. Talk about a mood killer. Alfred explains that a midwife has been called for one of the maids who's in labor. He just hopes everything goes well. This sparks an idea in Taepyeong's mind. Shall we go check it out? Points out they just had maternity ward training. They might actually be useful. Alfred thinks it over and agrees. Why not? Taepyeong knows this is different. This isn't the hospital. It's a private home. Here, he can actually step in if he sees them doing something dangerously stupid. As they arrive, a maid hands them the boiled water they asked for. Taepyeong peeks inside and sees the midwife scrubbing her hands and forearms. He's completely stunned. A midwife who actually washes her hands? Folks, he's found his unicorn. And just like that, the show begins. A woman screams as the midwife gets to work, barking orders. Taepyeong and the boys are glued to the scene, completely stunned. He's completely captivated. This isn't just a midwife. This is an absolute pro. She delivers the baby with a level of skill that puts every student in the room to shame. She wraps the baby, then immediately washes up again. Her movements are clean and efficient. My man is floored. Even with his 21st century knowledge, this level of raw experience is something else. He watches as she washes the infant in boiled water and gently tends to the exhausted mother. Every single thing she does is sanitary. It's the complete opposite of that hospital death trap. He's gotta know why. He approaches the midwife, who looks a little surprised to be addressed by him. He gets straight to the point. Why do you wash your hands with hot water? She seems a bit confused by the question, but says it's simply how she was taught. He asks if she knows the reason why, but nope. Her teacher learned it from her teacher, and it clicks. She doesn't know the science. It's just a tradition passed down through generations. These midwives figured out how to keep people safe through pure experience, not dusty textbooks. Later, Taepyeong watches the midwife leave from the window. Joseph walks up behind him, looking unusually grim. The whole experience clearly shook him. He starts talking about how much his own mother must have suffered. Taepyeong tries to steer the conversation, saying, those midwives are something else, right? But Joseph completely misses the point. He just complains that she was too slow. Wait, what now? He thinks washing her hands was a waste of time, while the mother was in so much pain. Alfred chimes in, blaming it on her lack of proper education. Oh, the irony. They decide this proves all births should be in hospitals. Taepyeong is just speechless at the stupidity. He wants to scream at these fools. Instead, he goes back to the hospital to find some cold, hard proof. He finds a nurse and asks how many cases of childbed fever they've had recently. She just gives him a blank stare. Why would anyone ever need to know that? He realizes this is pointless. The doctors here are basically butchers and nursing isn't even a real job yet. He asks if there are any records at all, but the nurse just shrugs him off. Suddenly, a little voice cuts in. A young girl carrying a laundry basket says there are documents. The nurse casually explains that this child is also a nurse. Taepyeong is floored. He knew child labor was a thing in this era, but seeing a kid working in a hospital just hits different. Kid looks grimy, but hey, a job's a job in this century. Probably better than the alternative. He asks if he can see the patient documents she was talking about. She gives him a long, serious look, and just says, "Follow me." She leads him to a dusty office overflowing with paper and points to a stack she sorted. He starts digging through them. All he finds are crude tallies of patients in and patients dead. He asks about the cause of death. The girl says she has no idea, because she can't write. Well, this is a dead end. Without a cause of death, he can't actually prove his case. But even the basic numbers are horrifying. For every 10 women admitted, 1 or 2 die. These were healthy women, folks. That mortality rate is completely insane. He asks about deaths after they leave. The girl says that's impossible to track. The real death rate, the one they aren't counting, could be as high as 1 in 3. He crushes the paper in his hand. This isn't a maternity ward, it's a murder factory. He has to make them see the truth. He turns to the girl and asks where to find the midwives. Turns out, some are at the hospital right now. The doctors can't handle every birth alone. Soon he's facing 3 very skeptical midwives, ready to start his investigation. He whips out a notepad and gets right to it. On your house calls, how many patients have died? One woman scoffs at the insulting question. She says none of her patients have died in months. And there it is, the proof. Their patients are actually surviving. As he asks more questions, one of them complains about doctors always looking down on them, but the little nurse is amazed. She says it's the first time a doctor has ever bothered to listen. He doesn't just listen, he takes careful notes and even pays them, earning their trust. He's gathered all the data. Alone, the numbers were meaningless. Together, they tell a powerful story. Armed with his proof, he strides through the hospital grounds, looking for his target. He finds Dr. Blundell and calls out, "I have something to show you." He slams the papers down on the desk, hard. He lays out the stone-cold facts. A 21% mortality rate for hospital births, compared to just 1.8% for home births. Blundell's reaction is, absolutely nothing. He just gives the paper a bored glance. Our boy is flabbergasted. This dude should be freaking out, but he clearly could not care less. Taepyeong tries again, pointing out the hospital's death rate is 10 times higher. Blundell just shrugs. Yeah, I can see that. His genius excuse? London's bad air. Apparently, it gets even worse inside a crowded hospital. He calls it miasma. Taepyeong is digging through his brain files, trying to remember what that even is. Ah yes, the miasma theory. For those of you who skipped history class, it's the ancient idea that diseases spread through bad smells. Pre-germ theory nonsense. Blundell then goes on a heroic rant about doctors sacrificing themselves in a raging sea of miasma. And that's when it clicks for Taepyeong. This guy isn't just clueless. He's got a full-blown martyr complex. Bro is completely high on the idea of sacrificing himself for his patients. This is going to be way harder than he thought. But just as our hero is about to give up, Blundell leans in. A tenfold difference, you say? How intriguing. Suddenly, the door creaks open. A voice says, "Tell me more." And in walks Dr. Liston, covered in blood and holding his massive knife. Taepyeong watches as even Dr. Blundell flinches at the sight of his coworker. Liston strolls in, absolutely loving the terrified looks he's getting from everyone. Liston claims the miasma theory is common knowledge, but Taepyeong immediately shuts him down. Not at all. Thinking on his feet, Taepyeong does a complete 180. Yes, of course I've already considered it. He claims he first suspected miasma, but then he discovered something else. Hand washing. Blundell isn't buying it, but Liston is completely hooked. A fresh perspective. Liston slams his giant knife on the desk, startling Blundell. He thought out of the box. We have nothing to lose by trying it. Cornered, Blundell caves. Fine. 1 ward only. He gets 1 month. Taepyeong can't believe it. He actually won. But the celebration is short-lived. Back at the hospital, the other doctors are furious. Taepyeong calmly explains the new rule. For 1 month, they will wash their hands before seeing patients. One doctor complains about how harsh the substance is. Taepyeong just deadpans, yes, it's harsh. Because folks, it's literally bleach. He'd considered other options, but boiling water was too slow, and the good alcohol was way too expensive. So he had to compromise with the skin-burning chloride of lime. One of them throws a full-on tantrum. "I'm done with this nonsense. Why should we obey you? Let's just leave." This is exactly what Taepyeong expected. He's learned that to persuade people, you need more than evidence. You need power. He calmly asks the doctors to wait, as Joseph steps up behind him, holding Liston's giant, terrifying knife. Then he drops the bomb. This order also comes from Dr. Liston. A quick flashback shows Taepyeong swiped the knife and gave it to Joseph for this exact moment. A true Chad move. The doctors gasp in total terror, thinking Liston's ghost has come to enforce the rule personally. Completely defeated, they scramble to wash their hands, begging Taepyeong not to snitch on them. Taepyeong stands victorious with his friends, All right, our turn to wash up. In the background, Colin shoots them a dirty look. And just like that, a month goes by. Inside the hospital, a nurse sifts through records. Her superior asks for this week's body count. The young nurse falls silent, a worried look plastered on her face. Meanwhile, Alfred catches up to Taepyeong outside. He says his father wants them to visit the factory. The factory? Taepyeong asks. Alfred blushes. You know, that rubber. It seems they've created a prototype. So, about that rubber prototype. Taepyeong and his crew, including the absolute unit Dr. Liston, take a carriage into the rougher side of London. Taepyeong is a bit confused. He was expecting a clean laboratory, not a grimy factory district. The driver warns him not to make eye contact since people here will fight over anything. But Taepyeong isn't worried. I mean, who in their right mind would mess with a dude built like Dr. Liston? Speaking of, Liston is practically buzzing with excitement to hear Taepyeong's latest idea. Taepyeong just plays it cool, admitting he's not totally sure how it will pan out. The carriage stops, a door creaks open, and two absolute mountains of men with a Peaky Blinders vibe welcome them inside. Okay, now Taepyeong is a little nervous. He's pretty sure even Dr. Liston would have his hands full with these guys. One of the workers proudly presents their creation. It's a thick, lumpy, flesh-colored tube. Taepyeong just stares, trying to figure out if he's looking at some kind of giant rubber worm. Man then says the magic words, "Here is the condom you requested." And boom, Taepyeong's brain just blue screens. He's staring at this monstrosity thinking, why is it so big? My guy could probably wear this thing as a sock. So what does our genius doctor do? He tries to fit his arm in it, of course. And would you look at that? It fits perfectly. Joseph and Alfred are absolutely horrified, wondering what is wrong with this man. He ignores their existential dread, noting the size is only one problem. Then he playfully taps Joseph. Joseph nearly jumps out of his skin, yelling at him to get that thing away from him. Alfred is the next victim. Taepyeong just presses the rubber hand sock against his face. He gives his professional opinion. The material is waterproof but way too thick. He asks if they can make it thinner so he can actually feel things. Joseph has a minor heart attack in the background. The factory workers get all flustered, awkwardly agreeing that sensation is probably important. Taepyeong clarifies that for delicate surgery, he needs to feel with his fingertips. The workers quickly agree to the design change. He smiles, thanking them. Then he adds one final request. Also, can you add 5 prongs to the end? The workers look like they've seen a ghost. They think he's asking for some kind of unholy marital aid. It takes him a second, but Taepyeong finally realizes his mistake. Oops, right? I forgot I was holding a condom. He quickly course corrects, drawing the shape of a hand on the floor. He wants gloves, not whatever they were thinking. The factory manager considers it. Since gloves don't need to be as thin, he figures it'll only take a week. Suddenly, it all clicks for Alfred. Dr. Liston is also intrigued, seeing a good test for his harmful particles theory. Taepyeong explains the gloves will make surgery safer and stop students from dying during dissections. Liston chimes in, saying the condoms are a great idea too. He points out that London has a bit of a problem. He does have one tiny critique. He looks at the arm-size prototype and asks, isn't this a little small? So Liston pulls one of the workers aside for a private consultation. The poor guy comes back looking like he's stared into the abyss. Liston returns, calmly suggesting they offer a wider variety of sizes. Taepyeong and Joseph are just completely broken at this point. But business handled, Taepyeong heads back, hopeful that in just 1 week they'll have proper surgical gloves. Until then, it's back to the harsh hand washing. But hey, maybe the suffering will make them appreciate the gloves more. Back at the hospital, one of the doctors isn't taking it so well. He smashes a pitcher in a rage, splashing Taepyeong. It's Colin, and he's leading a rebellion. He complains about having to scrape his hands raw on some fool's orders. Colin tells Taepyeong to drink the cleaning solution himself if he likes it so much, then tries to walk off with his crew. But Taepyeong stops them, reminding them they just came from handling dead bodies. Colin scoffs that Taepyeong is just a coward who avoids dissections. Taepyeong claps back that his skills are more than enough, unlike some people. That does it. Colin snaps, grabbing Taepyeong by the collar and slamming him into the wall. Joseph tries to intervene, but Taepyeong waves him off. He knows you can't mess with a rich kid like Colin. Colin goes for the low blow, calling Taepyeong's theories primitive superstitions with no scientific proof. He gloats that Dr. Liston is out on a house call, so there's no one around to save Taepyeong this time. Taepyeong is cornered, but then they hear footsteps approaching. A young nurse appears, carrying a basin. She politely asks the gentleman to excuse her. Before anyone can even blink, she douses both of them with the entire basin of water. Colin and Taepyeong jump apart, totally soaked and confused. The little nurse just stands there, holding the empty basin like a boss. With both men dripping wet, the nurse plays it cool. She calmly explains, "My apologies, sir. I slipped because it was too heavy." Then she points out how none of the so-called gentlemen even offered to help her. Passive-aggressive perfection. Ignoring their shocked faces, she just starts washing her hands, leaving them to marinate in their own failure. And that's the cue for the head nurse to roll in with her entire squad, telling the doctors to get out of the way. The head nurse barks out an order for everyone to line up and wash their hands before heading inside. The young nurse then turns to the doctors and asks if the soap is a little too stingy for them. Colin's face turns beet red. Totally defeated, Colin starts scrubbing, trying his best not to complain in front of the ladies. Taepyeong winces too. That soap is no joke. The nurse just gives Taepyeong a little shrug, completely unfazed by the chaos she just created. Taepyeong thanks her, but she's all business. She says she wasn't helping him, they just really needed to wash their hands. But then she gets serious, telling him that she and the other nurses have noticed something really important. The big secret? Fewer patients are dying in his ward. An older nurse confirms it, since they're the ones who see the real numbers. Then she hands him a stack of papers. She's sorted all the records for him. Taepyeong is visibly moved as he runs off with the data. Results are absolutely insane. A 24% death rate in other wards, compared to just 4% in the hand-washing ward. Taepyeong presents his findings to the senior doctors, basically telling them the numbers don't lie. Blundell is skeptical. All this from just washing hands? His ego clearly can't handle a student being right. When asked who did the research, Taepyeong gives full credit to his friends and the nurses who gathered the data. Taepyeong realizes Blundell isn't questioning the science. He's just furious that an Asian newbie proved him wrong. With Blundell's pride in the way, their only hope is Dr. Liston, and right on cue, Liston slams his hand down, shouting, "How fascinating." Liston sweeps the papers aside and makes a call. They'll continue the trial for another month. The other doctors look terrified, but Taepyeong is ecstatic. Later, Taepyeong thanks him. Liston simply says that as scientists, it's their duty to never stop trying new things. But then he gets serious. He warns Taepyeong that a lot of people are unhappy with him and he should watch his back. His friends agree, bringing up the gossip about him skipping dissection. Taepyeong's response is priceless. "That's because I don't want to die." Liston tells him to mind his reputation and play the game. Resigned, Taepyeong promises he'll be at the next dissection. Why the sudden change of heart? Because he just got word that his secret weapon is finally ready. The gloves. Back in the lecture hall, Colin is already running his mouth, wondering if the coward will actually do anything this time. Perfect timing. Alfred walks in with a box and says, "I brought the gloves." He even brought 5 extra pairs. Alfred smartly suggests they give the extras to Dr. Blundell and Dr. Liston. Taepyeong loves the power move. Moments later, Dr. Liston walks in, announcing 3 fresh cadavers. He starts splitting them into groups, and of course our boys are up first. Then, Liston adds one more name to their group with a mischievous look. "Colin, you join them as well." Oh, this is gonna be good. As the dissection is about to begin, Colin immediately starts running his mouth. "Stand aside, coward. Wouldn't want you to wet yourself." But just as he reaches for the tools, a hand comes out of nowhere and stops him cold. Surprise, it's Dr. Liston. He looks right past Colin and tells Taepyeong to take the lead this time. Colin is absolutely floored. Him? Not me? But I always lead the dissection. Liston basically tells him to sit down and let his classmates have a chance to study. Colin just grumbles about Taepyeong slacking off. One of the other students whispers to Alfred, wondering why he isn't getting a chance instead. He asks if Alfred is offended a first year is taking his spot. Alfred's reply is simple, "I'm not offended." He then turns to Colin and states, "I don't know about you, but I think Pyong is a genius." Alfred even smiles, saying he's interested to see what our boy will show them today. Colin is just seething with silent rage. Bro did not see that coming. Taepyeong notices the death glare and calmly picks up the box of rubber gloves. He thinks to himself, time to show this clown what an Asian monkey can really do. Colin immediately scoffs, mocking him for not wanting to touch the body with bare hands. Taepyeong just tunes him out. Internally, Taepyeong notes that the stomach was his specialty in his past life. But for these guys, it's uncharted territory. He knows if he opened up the torso right now, they wouldn't even have a clue what they were looking at. So, he decides to start with something they've all studied thoroughly. The limbs. With hands as steady as a rock, he brings the scalpel down to the corpse's arm. Right on cue, Colin starts yapping again. "Look how slow he is. This is gonna take all year." Taepyeong glances back with a little smile. "Of course I'm slow. I'm not trying to remove it." With insane precision, he slices the blade at an angle, going no deeper than the skin. Then, protected by his gloves, he slips his fingers between the skin and muscle. And with a sickening rip, he pulls the entire layer of skin clean off the muscle tissue underneath. Colin's jaw hits the floor. He is utterly speechless. The other students are just as shocked. What in the world? He separated the skin. Joseph is blown away. Who knew muscles could be seen this clearly? And there's hardly any bleeding. Taepyeong just gives a little shrug. It's a basic technique called fascial dissection. He knows the skin isn't firmly attached to the tissue below, so it can be peeled away just by pushing. And since they don't use modern preservatives here, the soft tissue makes it even easier to work with. He allows himself a small private moment of satisfaction. After all, they used to call him a genius for a reason. Dr. Liston is in absolute awe. "By God, how did you do that? You have almost no dissection experience." Taepyeong starts to sweat. Okay, how does he explain this one? He lands on the only plausible excuse. With a charming smile, he says, "It just felt right." Felt right? Liston and Colin both shout in unison, completely baffled. Taepyeong elaborates, claiming that when he made the incision, he noticed 3 sections that felt different. Of course, that's a total lie. The gloves are way too thick for him to feel that kind of detail. But he keeps the story going, describing how the thin skin, yellow fat, and distinct muscles all had a different feel. He says he lifted the part that felt different, saw some white threads, and just can't explain the complex anatomy to them, but it doesn't matter. He still has every structure perfectly memorized. And Liston is completely sold. You really did that based on instinct? You have a God-given talent. Then he drops a bombshell. How would you like to be my assistant for my next surgery? Taepyeong panics internally. He wants him to join his next surgery. Meanwhile, Colin is practically vibrating with rage and jealousy. That foreigner gets chosen to assist the famous Dr. Liston, so you can imagine his fury when Taepyeong quickly tries to decline. Oh, I couldn't possibly. I'm just a first year. But Liston won't take no for an answer. The year you're in has nothing to do with how good you are. Don't think of it as a burden. Then suggests a more casual setting. Some acquaintances of mine are hosting a little party. Why don't you join me? Taepyeong realizes Liston is trying to get closer to him. This could be a very good opportunity. Dr. Liston is on his side. Things will get much easier. Besides, he's too scared to say no to that creepy grin. All right then, I accept. Liston laughs, delighted. Wonderful. Bring your friends as well. Colin watches the entire exchange, practically stewing in envy. Suddenly, he blurts out, Doctor, may I join as well? Pyong and I grew quite close during today's session. Pyong is stunned by the sheer audacity of that lie. Colin just puts on a smug, closed-eye smile, oozing fake sincerity. Liston agrees easily. Oh, you can come too. Colin thanks him, still clinging to a very annoyed Taepyeong. Later that evening, the group arrives at a row of fancy London townhouses. Sneaky little weasel, Taepyeong thinks. Dr. Liston stops at a door. Here we are, he knocks, and the others follow him up the steps. As the door swings open, a wave of loud laughter pours out. Taepyeong is a little surprised. I thought a party of doctors would be stiff, but it sounds pretty cheerful. But stepping inside, he sees the real scene. It's not just cheerful, it's absolute chaos. Men are stumbling around, laughing uncontrollably, some even hiccuping on the floor. The room is full of well-dressed doctors who look like they are not in their right minds at all. A horrifying realization dawns on Taepyeong. Are they high? He turns to Dr. Liston, trying to play it cool. Are they okay? Liston just grins and says they're feeling fantastic. A little too fantastic. And yep, one peek into the room confirms it. These doctors aren't just drunk, they are high as a kite. My man just stumbled into a 19th century rave. So much for a stiff medical gathering. Liston gets way too close, suggesting they grab a bite and then have a little huff. Taepyeong is about to bolt for the door, but Liston grabs him. He proudly introduces him as his star student from a place called Joseon. Just like that, he's trapped. Can't exactly make a scene and leave now. While Taepyeong is having a full-blown panic attack, Joseph is living his best life. Bro is just demolishing the dessert table. He even offers some cake to a super distracted Taepyeong. Our boy can only mumble about how loud it is. Joseph thinks this party is way more fun than Alfred's stuffy gathering. Taepyeong just thinks his friend is a sweet, simple man. Then he remembers something he overheard earlier. Doctors casually using opium for a patient's stomachache. And it clicks. In this era, the concepts of drug abuse and addiction don't even exist yet. He starts scoping out the exits. The moment a needle or a pipe comes out, he is gone. But of course, that's when Liston calls his name. Taepyeong nearly jumps out of his skin. Liston proudly shows off this weird metal canister with a bag attached. He calls it laughing gas, the hot new party drug. Taepyeong is just staring at it, completely clueless. Liston twists a valve, and a hissing sound fills the air. Gas starts pouring out of a nozzle. Before Taepyeong can even blink, Liston grabs him and shoves the nozzle right in his face. Liston has this completely unhinged grin. Yep, Taepyeong definitely missed his escape window. But out of nowhere, Colin intercepts the nozzle. He shouts that he can huff it way better. Liston just laughs, entertained by this absolute clown. Too late though, the gas is already in the air, and Taepyeong's world starts to tilt. He feels his mind getting fuzzy, his control slipping away. Next thing he knows, he's on the floor laughing his head off for no reason. Then, a moment of clarity cuts through the haze. He has got to get a grip. He stumbles to his feet, still dazed, but determined to get out of there. He makes a break for the door, and immediately faceplants over some guy on the floor. He starts to apologize, but the dude just gives him this super creepy grin. The guy then leaps to his feet, laughing like a maniac. He clearly didn't feel a thing. Taepyeong is completely stunned. A fall like that should have hurt. A lot. Before he can think, a wobbly Colin stumbles right in front of him. Colin gets right up in his personal space, slurring insults. Bro is clearly wasted. Insults get racist, mocking Taepyeong's background and calling him a brat. Classy. And that's it. Taepyeong has had enough. Nobleman or not, this guy's asking for it. He winds up and decks Colin right in the jaw. The instant his fist connects, he's horrified. He did not actually mean to do that. Colin hits the floor, hand twitching. But then things get weird. He pops right back up, smiling from ear to ear, and grabs Taepyeong. Taepyeong can't believe it. Didn't that hurt? Colin just laughs and says it felt like nothing. Then the gears in Taepyeong's head start turning. The guy on the floor felt no pain. Colin felt no pain. He has a theory to test. He looks at Colin and asks, "So, does this punch hurt?" Punches him again, then kicks him for good measure. Colin's pain receptors have totally checked out. The dude just goes limp, not even fighting back. It has to be the gas. It's blocking all the pain. Now they're both high and laughing like lunatics. Taepyeong, totally gone, tells himself it's all a scientific experiment. He thinks, this is strictly for research, as he continues to absolutely wail on his rival. The next day at school, Colin rolls in with a gnarly black eye and a busted cheek. A classmate asks what happened, but Colin doesn't remember a thing. He figures he must have fallen. Taepyeong, sitting right there, lets out a silent sigh of relief. He got away with it. He thinks back on his research from the night before. The laughing gas dulls pain and makes your brain fuzzy. He even admits to himself that he was also totally high, which is why he couldn't stop. Then it hits him like a bolt of lightning. If this stuff dulls pain, could it be used for anesthesia? And just like that, a world-changing idea is born. He doesn't waste a second. He runs to Alfred, asking to borrow his carriage for an urgent experiment. Slamming the carriage door, Taepyeong makes a beeline for the rubber factory. The foreman sees him and immediately thinks the gloves he just made are already toast. But Taepyeong just smiles. Nope, the gloves were great. A little too durable, actually. He cuts to the chase, asking about the laughing gas from the party. Foreman's friendly demeanor vanishes. Laughing gas? You mean nitrous oxide? He immediately assumes the worst and starts giving Taepyeong the anti-drug talk. He goes full dad mode, scolding him. That's what they all say. Stick to using it at parties and that's it. Taepyeong finally gets a word in, his eyes gleaming. You misunderstand. I think it could work as a sedative. Passionately explains that if they give it to patients during surgery, it could completely numb their pain. The foreman freezes. Now that is an interesting idea, he actually starts to consider it. It reminds him of a chemist he knew, a Professor Humphrey Davy, who proposed the same thing years ago. Taepyeong's face lights up, asking for a meeting, but the foreman's expression darkens. I knew him, but he died last year. Riding back, Taepyeong sighs. His one and only lead is 6 feet under. What a bust. But the trip wasn't a total loss. He managed to snag a small supply of nitrous oxide and a few books. And best of all, a paper that Professor Humphrey Davy wrote. He marvels that the foreman kept a research paper from 30 years ago. What a legend. Back at the mansion, Alfred and Joseph are in the middle of a card game when he walks in. They watch him hurry past, clearly a man on a mission. Seeing his friend's intense drive, Joseph puts his cards down. I think we should stop here. He realizes he needs to hit the books, otherwise he's going to get left in the dust. Later that night, by candlelight, Taepyeong dives into his research on nitrous oxide. He's floored. The gas was discovered way back in the 1700s, but was only ever used for parties. He can't believe it. It's been around for centuries, but nobody thought to use it for surgery? He shakes it off and focuses on Davy's paper. This is it. Notes on actual clinical trials on human subjects. Paper lists 4 stages of inhalation: painlessness, delirium, sedation, and finally, stopped breathing. A chilling question hits him. Huh? How did they know about stage 4? The answer is grim. The subject died in the 4th stage. Can't wrap his head around it. The professor tested until the subject literally died. 19th century science was built different, so that's why it stayed a party drug. But the key is that it was successfully used as an anesthetic, even if it ended badly. There's only one way to figure out how to use it safely. I'll have to conduct my own tests. Next day, Taepyeong meets Dr. Liston to pitch his idea. Liston is immediately skeptical about sedation. Liston scoffs, saying he's tried it all. People always wake up when you put a knife to them, even if you knock them out with a bat. He even recounts dealing with a quack hypnotist with his own special brand of sedation. Taepyeong's smart enough not to ask if the guy survived. Taepyeong quickly changes the subject, specifying he wants to use laughing gas. He explains the incident at the party. I beat him. I mean, he seemed to have taken a tumble, but he didn't even feel it. So, couldn't they use that power for surgery? Liston strokes his chin. The gears in his head start turning. Taepyeong waits anxiously. Liston admits he's tried this stuff himself, but for surgery, he's actually considering it. Liston asks if he's run any tests. Taepyeong grins. That's exactly why I came to you. I was hoping you could help. He lays out the plan. Use the college's research funds to get lab rats, scales, and everything they need for a proper experiment. Liston grins. Of course I can. Then he asks if Taepyeong brought the gas. Then we can begin immediately. Taepyeong is ecstatic, ready to finally get started. He follows Liston, assuming they're headed to a lab. He feels a little nostalgic, thinking it's been a while since he ran tests on rats. Confidence vanishes when they walk right into the main lecture hall, which is packed with students. Liston gets everyone's attention. Pyong here has proposed a great experiment regarding sedation. A horrifying thought hits Taepyeong as Liston asks for volunteers. Oh no, they aren't using rats, they're using students. Before he can even protest, a hand shoots up from the crowd. Taepyeong whips his head around in disbelief. It's Joseph. Joseph, why are you raising your hand? With total conviction, Joseph declares, I wish to be like Pyong and help patients. Taepyeong's mind jumps to the worst conclusion. Is Liston about to amputate Joseph's arm for science? But Liston just scoffs at the idea. He tells Taepyeong not to be absurd. They're only pulling a tooth. Taepyeong feels a wave of relief before he remembers where he is. A tooth extraction in this era is basically a horror movie. He tries to shut it down using his classic Joseon excuse. He argues that teeth are one of the 5 blessings of life. But his protest has the opposite effect. Suddenly, the whole room is hyped, and everyone wants to volunteer. Alfred sees this as his chance to finally make a real contribution to the field of medicine. Colin, meanwhile, just sees it as an easy way to suck up to the professor. Taepyeong is floored. Are these doctors really as reckless with their own bodies as they are with their patients? Liston calmly strokes his chin, enjoying the chaos. He reminds them they only need 1 volunteer. He suggests the most unhinged solution. They'll settle this like gentlemen, with a wrestling match. Instantly, the entire lecture hall explodes into a full-on battle royale. Taepyeong can't believe it. This isn't wrestling, it's a bar fight. Someone's gonna lose their teeth the old-fashioned way. Alfred takes a hard right to the jaw and is immediately out of the competition. Honestly, Taepyeong is relieved. At least his friend is safe now. But his other friend, Joseph, is a completely different story. My man is absolutely cleaning house. Taepyeong starts to get nervous. At this rate, Joseph is definitely going to win. Can't let his best friend be the guinea pig for this. He quietly apologizes to Joseph in his head. Muttering that this is for his own good, Taepyeong grabs the back of Joseph's coat. He gives it a sharp yank, pulling Joseph completely off balance. Colin sees the opening and lunges, tackling the distracted Joseph to the ground. Joseph struggles, but he was caught completely off guard. And just like that, Colin wins with a cheap shot. The crowd cheers as he celebrates. Joseph is fuming, but Taepyeong just pats him on the back. He tells him it's not a big deal at all. Dr. Liston motions to the front. Lie down here, Colin. As Colin's friends cheer for him, Taepyeong ties a cloth over his face and gets ready. With a grim smile, Liston holds up a menacing pair of pliers. Shall we begin? Taepyeong gives a firm nod, his mind racing. He can't believe they're doing a live clinical trial. He opens the valve on the nitrous oxide tank. Laughing gas begins to flow, surrounding Colin's face. Stage 1 is the absence of pain. So far, so good. Next comes Stage 2, delirium. A dopey smile spreads across Colin's face. Taepyeong watches intently. The goal is to keep him in the 3rd stage. If he goes any further, he'll hit the 4th and final stage, where his breathing stops. May not like the guy, but he can't let him die during a simple tooth extraction. Dr. Liston and Taepyeong share a look. It's time. With a firm grip, Liston latches onto the tooth. With one powerful yank, he rips it clean out. Blood splatters across the white background. Liston leans in close. Colin? Did that hurt? A thin line of blood runs from the corner of Colin's mouth, but Colin just grins, completely blissed out. It worked. He's completely sedated and didn't feel a single thing. Dr. Liston's eyes begin to well up with tears. Taepyeong is completely taken aback by the sudden show of emotion. Overwhelmed, Liston clasps his hands. He thanks God that they can finally spare patients from pain. The scene is a gruesome mess of blood, but as Liston kneels, the moment feels almost holy. A single tear falls from his eye, mixing with the blood on his hands. And in that moment, Taepyeong finally understands. Liston might look like a butcher, and his methods might be brutal. He takes no pleasure in his patient's pain. He was just a man of his time, who simply didn't know how to prevent it. Now, Taepyeong sees why they call him a great doctor, and with a mentor like this, he feels he can achieve anything. Fresh off their victory, Taepyeong is ready to do some actual science. He suggests maybe, just maybe, they could test the gas on some mice first. But Liston isn't interested in a science fair project. He barks at Pyong to grab the gas and follow him. A confused Taepyeong lugs the giant canister and tries to keep up. Stopped by Dr. Blundell, who is not thrilled to see a blood-soaked Liston. Blundell warns him to get cleaned up. There are reporters watching them. Reporters? Taepyeong did not sign up for this. Liston throws open the doors to a packed operating theater. This is not a lab. It is a stadium. And in the center, a terrified man sits shaking, waiting for the show to start. Liston grins like a madman. He tells Taepyeong they're doing the experiment right here, right now. Taepyeong is floored. This is not science, it is a public amputation, and he is the warm-up act. So, fun fact about the 19th century. Teaching and surgery were how doctors made their money. But public surgery was basically like pay-per-view, and Dr. Liston was the main event. The crowd is hyped. People are bragging about how hard it was to even get tickets. They are even placing bets on whether Liston will beat his 30-second amputation record. And it hits Taepyeong. These people are not here for medicine. They are here for the gruesome entertainment. Liston, ever the showman, thanks everyone for coming out. He declares that today's main event is this poor gentleman's leg. The patient looks like he is about to have a heart attack. Taepyeong gently approaches the man to take a look at his leg. He rolls up the man's trouser leg, revealing a horrifying sight. Yikes, the foot is rotting right off the bone. It is a clear case of necrosis. He knows the leg has to go. If not, the infection will certainly kill him. but the patient completely loses it. He wails that he cannot go through with it. He just cannot handle pain. The crowd starts jeering, but he does not care. He would rather live with the rot. Taepyeong desperately tries to talk some sense into him. This is not discomfort. This is death. Then Liston pops up, holding the gas canister like a masked executioner. With a creepy grin, he promises this will numb all the pain. The patient is now completely and utterly terrified. He starts screaming, convinced they are trying to poison him. Taepyeong jumps in, explaining it is to knock him out so he will not feel a thing. Crowd murmurs. They are not buying it. They think it is some kind of scam or sorcery. They think Liston is about to kill him. Liston looks at Taepyeong, who gives him a determined nod. It is go time. Liston calls for his knife, and Joseph eagerly presents it, but Liston stops dead in his tracks. His knife is clean, like sparkling clean. He is actually upset about it, moaning that his hard-won bloodstains are all gone. Joseph proudly whispers that he was the one who cleaned it. Taepyeong gives him a thumbs up. Then Alfred shows up with a wash basin so they can wash their hands. Liston tries to refuse, but Dr. Blundell reminds him that they all did it when he ordered them. Cornered, Liston lets out a frustrated grunt and gives in. Taepyeong, wearing a makeshift mask, scrubs his own hands, thinking about improving his gloves. But for now, it is time to focus. He has a job to do. The patient is strapped down. Taepyeong's only goal is to keep this man alive. He readies the canister, preparing to administer the nitrous oxide. He brings the nozzle to the patient's mouth, who groans once. His eyes flutter shut as he passes out completely. Taepyeong carefully administers the dose, trying to look confident. But now for the hard part. Taepyeong is just guessing the dosage. Too little, he wakes up screaming. Too much, and he dies. No pressure. With the patient out cold, Dr. Liston raises his knife, tells the crowd to watch closely. He promises this surgery will be a very quiet one. He narrows his eyes, focusing with intense concentration. Then, in one clean motion, he slices right through the leg. The crowd gasps, totally silent for once. But the patient does not even twitch. He looks completely at peace. Taepyeong erupts in celebration. It worked. The sedation actually worked. Even Liston is screaming that it is a miracle. He grabs Taepyeong and hoists him into the air for the entire crowd to see. He gives Taepyeong all the credit, who just laughs nervously. Taepyeong decides to just roll with it and gives the applauding audience a little wave. Even the skeptical reporters are now scribbling notes like their lives depend on it. The next day, as Taepyeong and Joseph walk through campus, everyone is staring. Joseph is weirded out, but Taepyeong is feeling pretty good about himself. Fame at last. He cannot help but feel proud. He pulled that off with zero practice. Joseph spots their friend Alfred buying a newspaper up ahead. They call out to him, but he just stands there, looking grim. The cheerful mood vanishes instantly. Something is clearly wrong. Taepyeong asks him what happened. Alfred just looks pale and worried. He holds up the newspaper, and the headlines are not good. The papers are calling Liston a fraud and Taepyeong's method strange Eastern sorcery. Dr. Liston absolutely loses it, slamming his hands on the desk in a fury over the headlines. He can't believe it. They saw a medical miracle and printed pure garbage. Taepyeong breaks it down for him. The press thinks the whole surgery was a stage show, or that Liston got played. But since they're too scared to attack a famous surgeon, they're tearing into Taepyeong instead, the unknown guy from Asia. And to add insult to injury, they butchered his name. Now all of London knows him as Mr. Pyong. Suddenly, there's a loud banging on the door, and an old man storms in, ready for a fight. Taepyeong guesses this must be the hospital director, and yep, the guy is absolutely fuming. The director screams at them, while Dr. Blundell explains that the school is swarming with reporters asking if Liston was duped. Liston just crushes the newspaper in his fist. He looks at Taepyeong and says they'll show them all. The second they step outside, they're mobbed by a pack of reporters shouting questions and demanding answers. One reporter points right at Taepyeong. "You boy, are you even a real doctor?" Taepyeong tries to defend himself, explaining he's just a student and that laughing gas is basically a party drug. But it's no use. He quickly realizes the press will spin things however they want. Some things never change. Suddenly a loud clap cuts through the noise. It's Liston, telling the vultures to stop twisting his students' words. Then he drops a bombshell, declaring that Pyong is his equal in talent, which shocks the entire crowd into silence. The reporters are stunned. How can the greatest surgeon in London say a brand new student is on his level? Liston just grins. You can see for yourself. He leads the skeptical reporters to the dissection room, warning them to watch carefully before printing more lies. With a nod from Liston, Taepyeong pulls on his gloves. It's time to put on a real show. He announces he'll start with the limbs, then makes a swift, impossibly clean slice down the corpse's arm. The reporters gasp. There is no bleeding. They have never seen anything like this before. Taepyeong is unimpressed. He could do this on a living person. He invites them closer to see the clear separation of tissue. He asks Joseph for tweezers, confusing him. Tweezers are usually for tying off blood vessels, not this. With incredible finesse, Taepyeong isolates a single blood vessel and a nerve, explaining it minimizes damage. Dr. Liston watches in awe. His own method is basically cut fast and pray. This level of precision is revolutionary. Taepyeong then offers to open the stomach, but warns them the smell will be much worse. The reporters have seen enough. Liston claps a hand on his shoulder and turns to the press. Well, does Pyong still seem like a fraud? One reporter weakly protests that it was just a corpse. In a flash, Liston snatches the man's pen and snaps it in half. Oops, Liston says with a terrifying grin. I thought I saw a fly. So many bugs in this room. Then orders the terrified press to write a good article about the promising young man. And one last thing. Don't call him Mr. Pyong. Refer to him as Dr. Pyong. Taepyeong is stunned. It's the first time he's been called a doctor in this life. He's finally earned Liston's full respect. Just as planned, the newspapers completely changed their story, now calling Dr. Pyong Liston's star pupil. Taepyeong plays it cool, while Joseph admits he's a little jealous of his friend's new fame. Suddenly, a voice shouts for them. It's the hospital director, waving frantically from a window up above. He's yelling for them to hurry over. The reason? Apparently, he's about to break his own arm. You just can't make this stuff up. Turns out the director wasn't exaggerating. They find him wrestling a hammer away from Dr. Liston, who's roaring like a madman trying to smash his own hand. With a crash, the others pile on and finally restrain the exhausted professor. He slumps into a chair, completely out of breath. Pyong, having no clue what just happened, cautiously asks what that was all about. Liston explains that the newspapers are going absolutely wild over their new painless surgery. And because of the hype, every single patient in London is flooding the hospital. The director, however, is beaming. To him, this is nothing but good news and a golden opportunity. Liston furiously accuses him of being a greedy profiteer, but the director is already dreaming of opening a second hospital. Liston throws his hands up in frustration. Is he supposed to just line them up and chop away like he's cutting firewood? So yeah, the director's greed created a workload so insane that Liston tried to take himself out of commission. The audacity. Once the director finally leaves, a drained Liston collapses at his desk, muttering about infuriatingly stubborn people. Taepyeong has never seen him this worn out. He knows the director won't be giving up that easily. Suddenly, Liston groans and clutches his forehead. He says he needs to seek treatment for a headache. Treatment for a headache? Taepyeong is completely lost. He knows it's just a tension headache. Back in the 21st century, he'd just pop a painkiller. But in this era, he figures they'll try something primitive, like a neck massage or some weird herbs. Liston opens a nearby door and calls out for someone named Thomas. A man named Thomas greets him. Then Liston calmly steps onto a bizarre spinning contraption. As the machine begins to whir, Taepyeong asks what on earth it is. His jaw hits the floor when he sees another man being violently spun around inside it like a Disney World ride. He can't believe it. There was a person inside that thing? Liston climbs in himself, explaining his chronic headaches require this special treatment. Thomas gives Taepyeong a smug look, explaining that this machine is called a centrifuge. He explains their absolutely wild theory. Headaches are caused by bad blood rushing to the head. The centrifuge supposedly uses centrifugal force to drive the blood back down to the feet. He calls it revolutionary science. Taepyeong is horrified. Revolutionary? This thing is going to shorten his lifespan. He recognizes this for what it is, high-G astronaut training. For a regular person, it could easily cause a stroke. When the spinning finally stops, Liston stumbles off the machine, dizzy and groaning. He's clearly suffering from a lack of oxygen to the brain and even has temporary amnesia. Thomas just laughs it off, saying Liston's mind has been refreshed. Taepyeong panics and rushes to get him out of there. With Joseph's help, Taepyeong supports the wobbly doctor and they make a quick exit. Just then, a stout man with a prominent mustache scoffs at the centrifuge. He coolly pulls out a multi-bladed fleam. For bad blood, he says, bloodletting is the only real answer. And just like that, they're cutting the first patient's foot to let him bleed. You just can't make this stuff up. The mustache doctor boasts about his French training, calling the centrifuge a child's toy. Taepyeong can only watch in horror. It's the same poor guy from the spinner. Now they're bleeding him? What the heck? All this for a simple headache. He sighs, reminded once again how brutal life is in the 19th century. Later that night, the students are finishing up in the dissection room. It's gotten pretty late. Alfred jokes that the centrifuge probably scrambled the patient's brain for good. Deciding it's too hard to work by candlelight, Alfred suggests they all head home. As they prepare to leave, Taepyeong catches sight of their rival, Colin, approaching. Colin gives them a nasty look, accusing them of slacking off now that Liston's gone. He throws in a racist taunt for good measure. Taepyeong has zero energy for this. He just tells Joseph to leave it and they turn to go. As they walk out the door, Colin watches them with pure venom in his eyes. He's seething with jealousy. It was his tooth they pulled for the experiment. So why are the papers only talking about Taepyeong? He fumes to himself, wondering what makes Taepyeong so much better than him. Outside, the group sees a man pushing a handcart with a body under a sheet. Alfred explains that at this hour, it's a deceased patient from their hospital being returned to their family. Taepyeong looks on with a somber expression, watching the cart rattle by. Just as the cart passes, the sheet slips, revealing the face of the dead man. Taepyeong freezes in shock. It's the same patient who is being treated for a simple headache. He's dead already? No, they didn't just treat him. They killed him. Taepyeong clutches his head, filled with an overwhelming sense of regret. He should have tried to stop them. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Alfred spots something, a twitch. He stares, utterly bewildered. Did that corpse just move? The ride back is dead silent. Alfred stares out the window, unable to shake the image of that twitching corpse from his mind. Joseph senses the tension and asks his friend what's eating at him. Alfred admits that something he saw back at the hospital just doesn't sit right with him. He finally just says it, asking Taepyeong point blank if he also thought he saw the body move. Alfred tries to downplay it, blaming the dim light, but Taepyeong knows his friend's senses are sharp. A horrifying thought crosses Taepyeong's mind. He tells the coachman to turn around. They need to check something. Their new destination is a bleak, moonlit public graveyard. Joseph is immediately ready to nope out of there, asking if they seriously have to go in. Taepyeong points out that this is a pauper's graveyard, not some fancy church. The bodies here are barely even buried properly. As they walk through, Alfred notes all the disturbed graves. It's not like the poor have valuables for grave robbers to steal. Joseph, now trembling, asks if they've ever read Frankenstein. You know, the book about a monster made from corpses. Alfred teases him for being a scaredy cat, but Joseph is genuinely terrified right now. He begs Taepyeong to leave, but Taepyeong calmly tells him there are no ghosts here. And right on cue, a sinister-looking bald man pops up from the shadows, asking what they're doing. Naturally, they all scream their heads off, thinking he's some kind of ghoul. The man just laughs awkwardly and introduces himself as the graveyard's caretaker. Alfred, ever the diplomat, explains they're looking for a patient who was recently brought over. The caretaker tells them the man's already in the ground. The poor can't afford to wait around for a funeral. But then he gets a greedy glint in his eye, offering to dig him up for a small fee. Suddenly, it all clicks for Taepyeong. This man isn't just a caretaker, he's a body snatcher, laughing that a fresh corpse will cost them a premium. This must be where the medical school gets its unidentified bodies for dissection. The audacity. Without missing a beat, Alfred asks the man to name his price. Tells him to get digging, offering to pay double if he does it right now. The caretaker's eyes light up. He grabs his shovel, ready to get to work. As the digging begins, Taepyeong asks Alfred if he's sure about this. What if it's all for nothing? Alfred is firm. He says it's worth the money just to be certain. He adds quietly that sometimes, no amount of money is enough to save someone. A few minutes later, the caretaker hits wood and tells them to come have a look. He calls Joseph over for some muscle. Suddenly, a loud bang comes from within the coffin. Our boys are shocked. Then, even more bangs. Joseph starts freaking out about Frankenstein again, but Taepyeong yells at him to help open it now. Together, they heave the lid off, revealing the patient inside. The man isn't moving. Alfred checks his wrist for a pulse and finds nothing. He says the patient is gone. But Taepyeong isn't giving up. He tells Alfred to lower the man's pants, explaining the pulse is stronger in the groin. He presses 2 fingers against the femoral artery, focusing intently, searching for any sign of life. There it is! A faint beat. He shouts. He has a pulse. It's so weak he almost missed it, but the man is definitely alive. The hospital just declared him dead and sent him off to be buried. A fatal mistake. Taepyeong knows that in this era, without proper medical tools, being buried alive was a very real possibility. The man must have heard their voices and used his last bit of strength to knock. They have to save him. He screams for the coachman to get them back to the college and to step on it. When they arrive, Colin is standing outside, annoyed by all the noise. He watches them carry in what looks suspiciously like a corpse they just dug up. His competitive little brain immediately assumes they're sneaking in a body for extra dissection practice. Furious that they'd cheat, he calls them scoundrels and storms after them to bust them. He bursts into the lecture hall, ready to lecture them, but stops short. They're not dissecting the body, they're trying to save it. Taepyeong rolls up his sleeves, yelling for supplies. He declares, "We might be able to save him." Colin just stands there, completely baffled. Is this guy seriously trying to bring someone back from the dead? The team scrambles into action. Joseph rushes in with the boiled water Taepyeong demanded. As Taepyeong washes his hands, Joseph moves to check the water's temperature with his finger. Taepyeong frantically stops him, shouting not to stick his dirty finger in the sterile water. He has to explain, very slowly, that he boiled the water specifically to kill the germs. The patient is losing blood fast, and with no transfusions available, this is his only hope. 4 fluids are still science fiction in this era, so Taepyeong's plan is to just pump water into the guy. Just then, Alfred presents the needle he sterilized with chloride of lime. Taepyeong stares in horror. The needle is an absolute unit, more like a harpoon. He grimaces, thinking it'll feel like a knife wound. But hey, bigger hole, faster transfer. Looking at the patient, he knows they just have to trust the man's will to survive. He tries for a vein in the arm, but they've all collapsed. He doesn't even have a tourniquet. So he changes tactics, targeting the large central vein in the man's chest instead. With zero hesitation, he plunges the massive needle straight into the patient's chest. The patient's eyes fly open and his body immediately starts convulsing violently. Taepyeong screams at the others to hold him still before the needle gets ripped out. And right on cue, the door crashes open. Colin stares at the absolute chaos unfolding. From his point of view, it looks like Taepyeong is performing some kind of demonic ritual. Completely terrified, Colin turns and sprints down the hall, yelling that he has to tell the doctor. Back in the room, Alfred panics, asking if they can sedate the patient. Taepyeong says no, it'll drop his blood pressure. Alfred stares blankly. Blood pressure? Taepyeong realizes the concept doesn't exist yet. Dodging the question, he just says they don't have time to go get the gas anyway. He grabs a funnel and begins carefully pouring the water, knowing a single air bubble is fatal. He thinks about how modern 4 bags make a deadly air embolism a complete non-issue. But here, pouring from an open pitcher, he has to go incredibly slow to prevent any air getting in. As Joseph holds the man's legs down, he notices the violent shaking is finally starting to subside. Soon the patient goes still. Alfred watches in relief as color returns to the man's face. Alfred breathes a sigh of relief, completely in awe. Pyong, you revived a dead man. Taepyeong panics. No, don't say that. People will think I'm practicing voodoo. Quickly clarifies they just brought back someone who wasn't fully dead. Alfred sheepishly agrees. Joseph asks if he's safe now, but Taepyeong shakes his head. The immediate danger is over, but he's not out of the woods yet. With nothing more he can do medically, Taepyeong says there's only one thing left to do. Pray. Alfred and Joseph are stunned by his sudden piety. After a moment, Joseph smiles and joins in. Meanwhile, Colin sprints into Dr. Blundell's office. Doctor, your work can wait. He hysterically claims the wicked Asian is desecrating the dead with satanic magic. When the doctors throw open the door, they find the 3 students praying devoutly over the patient. The doctors are speechless. One turns on Colin, completely bewildered. You're accusing these pious young men of witchcraft. Dr. Blundell recognizes the patient and demands to know what in the world happened here. After hearing the full story, Blundell is stunned. He saved a man by replenishing his blood with water? When asked how he came up with it, Taepyeong offers a flimsy excuse about washing his hands. But for Blundell, it's a revelation. This could be the key to saving women who die in childbirth. Colin just seethes in the background, furious that the Asian bastard has impressed yet another doctor. He storms out of the building and shouts for his coachman to take him to the nearest public graveyard. With a look of grim determination, he vows to show everyone that he can do better than Taepyeong. Oh, this is gonna be good. The next morning, Taepyeong is running on fumes. Bro stayed up all night. He was watching over the guy he saved. Dr. Blundell agrees to sneak the patient into his own ward for observation. The patient's looking way better. Taepyeong figures his youth will handle the rest. Then Joseph realizes they're about to be late for class. He tells Taepyeong to get a move on. They get to the lecture hall, and the vibe is weird. Joseph can tell something is off. A classmate points out that Colin, their #1 hater, is missing. That's strange. The guy practically lives here. Right on cue, Alfred bursts in. He yells for Taepyeong to come with him, like right now. As they're rushing down the hall, Alfred asks if he's friends with Colin. Taepyeong just remembers the guy lying to get into a party. Alfred says he got a message from a graveyard. Apparently, Colin is not having a good time. They arrive to find Colin on the ground, covered in something. He's also shaking like a leaf. Taepyeong has no idea what that gunk is. Then the smell hits him, and oh boy, it is not good. The caretaker explains Colin's been a mess ever since he looked inside whatever he dug up. Alfred pulls Taepyeong aside for a quick, horrifying history lesson. Apparently, being buried alive is a thing here. He mentions a recent graveyard check found scratch marks inside coffins. Some bodies were even missing fingernails. Taepyeong is horrified. He asks why they don't wait 3 days, just in case. Alfred says that's a luxury only the rich can afford. There's no money for a proper burial. The fact that funerals are a luxury item here completely blows his mind. To try and prevent this, they invented the grave bell. It's a rope from the coffin to a bell above ground. You can see where this is going. So a few hours earlier, a desperate Colin was hassling the caretaker. He was convinced Taepyeong found a patient here and wanted his own. Suddenly, he hears a faint ringing. He recognizes it from an article he read. It's a grave bell. He yanks the shovel from the caretaker and starts digging like a madman. He's yelling, "Colin is coming to save you." The shovel hits wood. He pries the lid open, and something inside explodes. Then it splashes everywhere. Back in the present, the caretaker points to the coffin. The splatter makes Alfred and Joseph want to vomit. But Taepyeong figures it out. It wasn't a person ringing the bell. It was decomposition gas bloating the body, and it must have moved the rope. Colin is just a trembling, broken mess. Taepyeong guesses he's seen corpses before, but probably not one that exploded on him. The guy's probably got PTSD for life. It's rough, because while he dug his own grave, he did actually want to be a doctor. Back at school, Dr. Liston finds Taepyeong grinning ear to ear. He heard what our boy did and says he's earned his respect. Liston suggests they be brothers and tells Taepyeong to drop the formalities. After all, he says he's only in his 30s. Wait, what? Taepyeong's brain just short-circuits? There is no way this man is only in his 30s. Liston waves it off and tells him to follow. The patient he saved is awake and wants to see him. The patient is weeping with gratitude, thanking Taepyeong for saving him. He tries to sit up, and Taepyeong has to steady him. Taepyeong starts a proper exam, asking about his nasty headache. The man says it's been 6 months and gets worse when he leans over. Taepyeong asks if he gets any colorful mucus. The guy is embarrassed, but confirms he does. That's not a good sign. Taepyeong knows this will be tricky. It's most likely a severe sinus infection. The headaches mean the inflammation is deep. In the 21st century, this would be a simple surgery. But this is 19th century England. Taepyeong realizes the solution. They're going to have to expose the man's facial bones. But actually performing that surgery here would be a death sentence. There are no antibiotics, and the tools are basically junk. The patient, Thomas, is clearly in agony. Taepyeong knows he has to do something, so he resolves to at least give the man some temporary relief. Tells Joseph to go fetch some boiled water. Taepyeong holds out the teapot and tells Thomas to put his nose over it. The poor guy is extremely confused. He just wants him to inhale the steam. Joseph and Alfred look on like he's completely lost his mind. The patient hesitantly leans in and starts sniffing the steam. Joseph and Alfred start muttering. This looks less like medicine and more like some kind of bizarre ritual. Naturally, they immediately jump to the conclusion that this is Eastern sorcery. Taepyeong has to yell to snap them out of it, insisting it's just steam going up the guy's nose. He asks Thomas if he can breathe any easier now. To everyone's absolute shock, Thomas exclaims that he can. He can actually breathe. Taepyeong explains it using an analogy they'd understand. Taking a warm bath. He asks Joseph if he's ever blown his nose in the bath. Joseph blushes, admitting a lot of gunk comes out. And that's the principle. Warm steam opens the nasal passages, letting all the bad stuff drain out. He knows the real science is way more complex, but decides to keep it simple for them. Trying to explain gas exchange to these guys would be pointless. Joseph and Alfred are amazed. They've experienced this before but never connected the dots. Joseph praises Taepyeong's genius, and our boy just plays it cool. The patient thanks him, saying his headache is already better now that he can breathe. But Taepyeong warns him they're just getting started. Now it's time for a deep clean. Clarifies that they're cleaning the asterisk inside asterisk, and promptly shoves the teapot spout up the patient's nose. He tells him to hold his breath and starts pouring. The patient starts choking as Joseph screams. Yeah, you have to admit, this looks a lot like waterboarding. Suddenly, a disgusting yellow river pours from the man's face. The onlookers are horrified, but also impressed. Later that night, the patient is sleeping soundly for the first time in months. Outside, the doctors discuss the insane amount of pus that came out of him. No wonder his head hurt so badly. His entire sinus cavity was completely full. When asked if he's cured, Taepyeong admits this is only a temporary fix. Just cleaning it won't be enough, and he's still worried about the risks of a real surgery. He decides it's best to let the main hospital handle the patient now that he's a bit more stable. But just as he's leaving, another doctor bursts in shouting for Dr. Blundell. A pregnant patient is in critical condition. Blundell asks if they tried injecting water into her blood vessels. The doctor confirms they did, but it didn't work. Blundell desperately looks for Pyong, but he's already gone home. Growing desperate, Blundell has a big brain idea. What if they use blood instead of water? One of the other doctors is horrified, asking if he should go catch a dog to bleed. Blundell declares they don't have time for that. They'll use human blood. Subordinate calls the idea diabolical, but Blundell insists a life is on the line. He rallies the others, telling them all to stick out their arms and donate blood to save her. The next morning, Taepyeong arrives at the school to get the story. Blundell, shaking, doesn't know what went wrong. He tells Taepyeong that the patient died. Taepyeong is shocked but not surprised. He thinks to himself, of course she did. He knows exactly why it failed. They have no concept of blood types. The different blood types would have instantly clumped together, killing her from the inside. Taepyeong just facepalms in pure frustration. He compares these doctors to unsupervised children. You turn your back for 1 second and disaster strikes. Sighing, he tells Joseph they have no choice. They're going to cure the headache patient themselves. He can't trust this hospital with anyone. Joseph immediately agrees. They saved him together, so they'll see it through to the end. Taepyeong is touched, though he admits to himself this is mostly fueled by rage. He tells Joseph he needs to practice in the dissection room and asks him to hold the cadaver's head. In the dissection room, Taepyeong holds up a chisel and a hammer. He announces this is the area he'll need to operate on. Joseph gets freaked out, saying he keeps making eye contact with the corpse. He knows it all makes sense, but he keeps making eye contact with the corpse. Taepyeong notes their discomfort, but he knows he needs as much practice as he can get. Suddenly, a new guy enters the room, telling Joseph to step aside. Surprise? It's Colin. And with a dead serious expression, he says, I'll hold the head. Colin stands over them, dead serious. Taepyeong is just trying to process this sudden rival ex machina. Taepyeong asks if he should even be here, but Colin is not in a talking mood. He looks absolutely furious. He explodes, accusing Taepyeong of secret practice. He thinks this is all to get a one-up on him. He even smacks Alfred's hand away from the body. He calls Taepyeong a cheater for practicing ahead. Then he cuts to the chase. He came here to hold the head. Simple as that. For all his tough talk, Colin's hands are shaking. And not just a little bit. Bro is not okay. So Colin does the most logical thing possible. He bites his own hand to make the shaking stop. When he reaches in to hold the head, Joseph immediately grabs his wrist. He snaps at Joseph not to treat him like a coward. His pride is clearly on the line here. But Joseph just calmly tells him that's not it. He's worried about the bite wound getting infected. Alfred even offers up a pair of gloves. Colin is just speechless. He was clearly ready for a fight, not basic human concern. After a long, awkward pause, he disinfects his hand. He mutters about how annoying Taepyeong is, but he puts on the gloves anyway. And with that, he firmly grabs the cadaver's head. He's actually here to help. He tells Taepyeong to get on with it already. His hands are still shaking, but he's committed. Taepyeong is surprised. Colin might be an insufferable twat, but he's got balls of steel. And after a very, very long night, a new day begins. Dr. Liston finds him with some huge news. Taepyeong is finally leading his first surgery. Liston says it's a small one, with a limited audience. Taepyeong is confused. They sold tickets to this? Turns out limited means about 20 people. The patient, Thomas, is understandably nervous. Taepyeong knows a sterile environment is a joke. Not with this many people breathing everywhere, but he has to push through. He thanks Joseph for disinfecting what little they could control. The patient is shaking with fear. He actually flinches when Taepyeong gets close. Taepyeong calmly reassures him. It will all be over when he wakes up. Thomas starts tearing up. He's just so relieved his awful headaches will finally end. He agrees, putting his full trust in our guy. Then he lies down on the table. Alfred steps in to administer the anesthetic. Taepyeong is glad to have his careful friend on the job. The patient is out. The practice is done. It's all on Taepyeong now as he puts on his gloves. Now, the standard procedure is pretty simple. You just cut open the side of the nose, but that would leave a massive scar. In this era, that basically brands you a criminal for life. So Taepyeong has a better idea. He tells a confused Colin to pull the guy's upper lip back. With total focus, he makes the first cut, right into the patient's gums. Once he exposes the bone, he pulls out a hammer. Yes, folks, a hammer and chisel. The sound of banging echoes through the room. The audience thinks he's nailing the guy's face, but Taepyeong ignores them, focusing completely. One slip here and he hits an eye, or the brain. Even Dr. Liston is bored. He thinks surgery should be fast and messy, not careful. Then, a sharp crack. Taepyeong's through. He can see the infected cavities. Immediately, a horrible smell fills the air. The audience is not having a good time. He uses pliers to make the hole bigger. A thick stream of pus starts to ooze out. Even Colin is grossed out by the smell. Taepyeong starts cleaning out all the gunk. But there's a problem he didn't have with the corpse. A live patient bleeds, making it hard to see. Just as he's processing this, Colin's voice cuts in. Oi, Asian, is that normal? Still a D-bag in front of an operating table. Ugh. Anyway, blood is starting to leak from the patient's nose and mouth. Taepyeong freezes. He has no idea how to stop it. And then the realization hits him. If he doesn't do anything soon, the patient is going to suffocate. And just like that, Taepyeong's big brain moment is over. Because he forgot one tiny detail. Unlike a corpse, a living person bleeds. If he doesn't plug the leak, the guy is going to drown in his own blood. Right here, right now. Even Joseph can tell something is deeply wrong. He's never seen Taepyeong look this terrified before. Taepyeong snaps out of his panic and starts yelling for gauze. Every last piece they have. Alfred quickly grabs a handful of bandages, ready to stop the bleeding. But he stops. After that whole lecture about germs, is it really smart to use unsterilized gauze? Colin notices the hesitation and snatches the gauze right out of his hands. He tells Taepyeong to handle the pus, and that he'll take care of the bleeding. Without a moment of hesitation, Colin just starts ramming the gauze into the patient's nose. Taepyeong is about to freak out but realizes Colin doesn't care about a potential infection. He's just focused on the immediate problem. And honestly, that's the wake-up call he needed. A future infection is bad, but suffocating is definitely worse. Sometime later, the surgery is done. The audience files out, complaining about the awful smell. Taepyeong slumps onto a stool, completely drained, and wipes the sweat from his forehead. Joseph congratulates him and asks if the patient survived. Taepyeong confirms he got all the pus out. He sighs, noting they'll need to swap the dirty gauze soon. In the background, Colin scoffs. There he stands, covered in blood, looking like he just won the lottery. He says he saw all of Taepyeong's so-called tricks, and he wasn't impressed. Then he declares that next time, he will be the one in charge. The audacity on this guy. Colin starts laughing his head off, while Taepyeong just stares at him, completely dumbfounded at this dude's lack of self-awareness. But then Taepyeong starts to chuckle. What a fool. Colin fixed a fatal mistake without even realizing it. You know what? He's earned the right to brag a little. Taepyeong decides to let it slide. With that, the patient who was buried alive and had his face drilled open was safely discharged. Meanwhile, Dr. Liston is having a lovely cup of tea, completely ignoring the screams echoing down the hall. He comments on what a nice quiet day it is, right as Taepyeong bursts into the room. What is that screaming? Taepyeong yells. You can hear it through the entire ward. Liston just hums, saying it is a little noisier than usual. A little? Bro, are you hearing this? Liston wonders if it's a new patient and suggests they check it out, leaving Taepyeong amazed by his lack of concern. They find a man twisting on his bed, screaming his lungs out in absolute agony, clutching his back, begging them to just end his suffering. Joseph and Alfred have no idea what's wrong. His limbs look fine, but he sounds like he's giving birth. Taepyeong, on the other hand, is already in diagnosis mode. The pain is focused on his lower back, and with this much intensity, it has to be a stone. Just then, a grinning doctor appears beside him, declaring, "It's a stone." At that one word, the patient goes rigid. his face a perfect mask of horror. Taepyeong is surprised. He didn't think doctors of this era knew much about the abdomen, but this doc nailed it. Suddenly, the patient thuds onto the floor and tries to crawl away, screaming, "No, not a stone, help me." Taepyeong is completely lost. Why is he reacting like this? He'll be fine once they remove it. He has kidney stones. Yeah, the pain is legendary, but recovery is usually pretty quick once it's out. The man is too weak from the pain to get far. The new doctor just tells his assistants to grab him. With chilling grin, the doctor says, "We'll take care of him." A sudden wave of dread washes over Taepyeong. He feels really bad for this guy. Liston then tells him that even as an amputation expert, he considers stone surgery to be something else entirely. He calls it murder. Taepyeong is stunned. If even Dr. Liston is afraid of this procedure, what in the world are they about to do? Taepyeong wonders what fresh horror is happening behind that door. What could possibly be so bad that it spooks the great Dr. Liston? He asks to observe the procedure. Liston just warns him he might want to unsee it later, but Taepyeong insists, saying it's a necessary step to become a good doctor. Joseph and Alfred back him up, impressed by his dedication. Pleased by their attitude, Liston agrees and leads them inside. He knocks on the door, announcing his arrival to someone named Kane. Dr. Kane, looking extremely stressed, curtly replies that he's busy. The moment they step inside, Taepyeong physically recoils from the scene. Liston asks if he's startled. Taepyeong admits he was not expecting this. He asks what's happening. Dr. Kane snaps that he's obviously preparing for surgery. Kane explains that the patient has stones forming inside his body. Taepyeong realizes the diagnosis is spot on. Even back then, they knew what stones were because you could see them. Kane continues, explaining if drinking water fails, a doctor has to go in and get it. Taepyeong is baffled. How could they possibly find a stone without an X-ray? He gets a very bad feeling as Kane reveals his first tool, a long, thin metal rod. Kane explains, step 1 is to insert the rod into the patient's urethra to widen it for a look. Another barbaric tool is then used to stretch the opening. Taepyeong can only stare in horror. The patient just sobs, begging them not to do the surgery and saying he'd rather just die. Dr. Liston grimly informs Taepyeong that this procedure has a mortality rate over 50%. He says either the stone comes out or the patient dies. But one way or another, the agony ends. Taepyeong is just shocked that he can quote such a horrifying statistic so casually. Side note, this surgery was so famously awful, a musician actually wrote a song about his experience. A horrible thought crosses Taepyeong's mind. He asks what happens if the stone is lodged deeper. Kane calmly replies that in that case, they cut away half the appendage for a better view. Taepyeong winces, physically feeling the phantom pain of that mental image. "That's barbaric," he shouts, pleading with them to wait as Kane gets ready to start. Taepyeong begs for just one day, or even a few hours, convinced he can find another way. Kane scoffs, asking why on earth he should trust a student when his patient is in agony. Then, Dr. Liston steps in, placing a hand on Taepyeong's shoulder. "Kane, give him a chance." He vouches for Taepyeong's skill, even calling him a younger brother. Taepyeong quickly agrees, seeing his impromptu brotherhood with the professor is already paying off. With Liston's endorsement, Kane reluctantly agrees. Taepyeong has until the evening. In the library, Joseph brings Taepyeong a massive stack of medical books. But as he reads, Taepyeong has a horrifying realization. Dr. Kane's method is actually one of the more humane options. He discovers texts describing far more gruesome techniques and bizarre tools. One medieval text shows a doctor shoving a hand up the patient's rear to push the stone. You can imagine how that ends. Worst of all, he realizes this was all done without anesthesia. The pain of the stones must have been truly unbearable. Thinking hard, he figures the stone must be in the bladder. He calls Joseph and Alfred for help. He tells them to prepare anesthesia and disinfect everything. The cloth, the thread, the entire table. With a resolute look, he reveals his radical plan. He's going to open the patient's abdomen. Dr. Kane immediately blows a gasket. He shouts, "Are you joking? Cutting open a patient's stomach?" He argues that abdominal surgery isn't just risky, he calls it straight-up murder. Taepyeong isn't surprised. For the 19th century, his plan is basically science fiction. Even Liston had his doubts. Remember, folks, with their dirty hands and unsterilized tools, opening a stomach was a death sentence. But Liston steps in to back him up, telling Kane to give him a chance. He vouches for Taepyeong, admitting he trusts him. He's not one to make empty promises. Dr. Kane grunts. He's still not convinced, but he can't argue with Liston. He gets right in Taepyeong's face. "Listen here. If that patient dies, I'm holding you personally responsible." Kane then threatens to personally train him on the proper methods. Taepyeong wonders if that's an invitation to a torture session. There's no turning back. He knows he has to make this work. That night, the team preps for surgery. All the tools are sterilized and laid out by candlelight. The operating room is ready. Joseph handles sanitation, and Alfred is on anesthesia duty. Taepyeong puts on his makeshift mask and new rubber gloves. It's go time. He disinfects everything in sight. His hands, the tools, and even the patient's stomach. Kane is already complaining. His stomach is turning red. Is that normal? Taepyeong just says it's better than the alternative. A little skin irritation is a small price to pay for not dying of infection. He's just glad this was a last-minute surgery. A full audience of coughing, unwashed spectators would have made this impossible. The time has come. He plans the incision in a straight line from the navel down. With a steady hand, he makes the first cut in one clean slice. Blood immediately starts gushing. He orders them to wipe it so he can see. Liston is impressed. Taepyeong managed to cut deep enough without touching any vital organs. Taepyeong mentally pats himself on the back. All that corpse dissection is finally paying off. Now for the tricky part. He has to find the bladder and pull it out with a hook. Keeps the incision small to reduce infection risk. Then he calls for the urine bucket. The patient had clearly been drinking a lot of water. Good for him because it made the swollen bladder easy to find. And then he sees it. I see something. Let me extract it. His eyes go wide in shock. Oh my God. He pulls out the stone and holds it up. My friend, this thing is enormous. The assistants can't believe it. The stone is the size of an egg. It's honestly a miracle this guy was even walking around with that inside him. Taepyeong looks at the patient with a new level of respect for his pain tolerance. Alfred is so fascinated he asks to keep it as a souvenir. Taepyeong tells him to get back to work. Let's begin stitching him up. I need you to focus. The silk thread they're using can rot, so he decides to sew all the layers together at once. Turns out he's just as good at closing wounds as he is at making them. And Dr. Kane? He's watching the whole procedure in stunned silence. Then a horrifying realization hits him. You mean we didn't have to cut their genitals off? Liston turns to Kane, looking proud. What did I tell you? He's an extraordinary fellow. Kane, ever the professional, refuses to celebrate yet. We'll have to see how the patient does after waking up. He orders Taepyeong to personally oversee the patient's recovery until he can walk out on his own. Taepyeong is more than happy to accept. Bro is absolutely beaming. Meanwhile, Alfred is watching Taepyeong with total admiration. He thinks to himself, Pyong is amazing. I wish I could treat patients as well as him. Later that night, we cut to Alfred at a lavish high society party. His dad finds him spacing out and gives him the classic lecture to represent the family well. Alfred just sighs. The pressure is clearly getting to him. He steps outside for some air, thinking about his friends back at the hospital. He tries to slip away quietly, but gets spotted by a couple of maids. The maids immediately recognize him. Oh my goodness, Master Alfred? Happy to see him, remembering him as the one rich kid who actually bothered to talk to the staff. Alfred asks about a red-haired woman who used to help him when he'd get lost in the house. The mood immediately turns serious. They tell him she went home because she got sick. When he asks what's wrong, they hesitate. But since he's a doctor now, they decide to tell him. With a grim tone, one of them reveals the diagnosis. It's syphilis. Alfred is completely floored. He just remembers her being so kind to him when he was a little boy. As London sleeps, Taepyeong and Joseph are wide awake, feeling good about their work. Taepyeong reports to Dr. Kane that their bladder stone patient is recovering perfectly. Turns out disinfection works wonders. But Dr. Liston notices someone's missing. He asks where Alfred is. Taepyeong explains Alfred had to attend a high society party, since it's the social season. Liston just scoffs at the idea. He says his family would never get an invitation to something like that. Taepyeong realizes that in his time, the best doctor in London would be a celebrity. Here, he gets zero respect. Liston adds that those parties are just a marriage market, and he isn't interested. But he says some people work very hard at climbing that social ladder. Joseph asks who he means. Right on cue, a ridiculously overdressed Dr. Blundell makes his grand entrance. Taepyeong can't help but think the man looks like an actual peacock. Dr. Kane snidely asks if he's found a wife yet, which gets an instant defensive reaction. Blundell complains that since he's in obstetrics, he can't sell tickets to surgeries, so he needs rich patrons. He complains that the season has been bleak, then drops some unsettling news. Apparently, a serious case of syphilis is sweeping through the city. Blundell clarifies it's just among the lower class for now. But even the rich are being careful. In the 19th century, if you get that diagnosis, it's a death sentence. There is no cure. Meanwhile, Alfred slams a book shut in complete despair. Two maids approach him, desperate. They know he's a doctor and beg him to cure their friend. Alfred can only look away. He admits there is nothing he can do for her. He thinks to himself that if it were a limb, they could just cut it off. But this is different. Just then, Taepyeong enters the room, happy to see him. He gives Alfred the good news. Their patient is recovering well, so they can move on. A troubled Alfred asks, move on to what? Taepyeong grins, dropping a bombshell. There's a scoundrel intentionally spreading syphilis in London. Alfred is floored as Taepyeong declares, and we're going to catch him. He explains that Dr. Blundell gave him a tip. All the new patients mention the same person. So, the crew puts on a disguise and heads out into the city for a stakeout. Joseph nervously points out that this is a job for the police. Taepyeong disagrees. Liston, holding that enormous knife of his, grimly explains that some victims are married women. Involving the police would ruin their lives. As for the knife, it's for emergency surgery. Yeah, sure it is. Joseph relays the suspect's description. Blonde hair, a cheap suit, and an accent from East England. Taepyeong points out that's basically half of London. But Joseph adds one more detail. He's very handsome. Taepyeong quickly deduces that if he's still charming people, he must be in the early stages of the disease. Oopsie. Nobody in this era has ever heard of stages yet. He quickly falls back on his usual excuse. It's a practice from the advanced country of Hosean. Liston totally buys it, calling the idea brilliant. He explains all the stages in detail. In stage 2, rashes appear on the hands and feet. By stage 3, he'll be too ugly to attract the ladies. Since enough time has passed for victims to show symptoms, the suspect must be in the secondary stage. So, the mission is simple. Find a handsome blonde guy with bumps on his hands and feet. Just then, a man matching that exact description walks down a dark alleyway, pauses for a moment, and then suddenly breaks into a full sprint. As he runs, they see his hand. It's covered in a rash. That's their guy. Taepyeong points and shouts, "He has bumps! Get him!" The chase is on. The suspect thinks he's getting away, but Joseph has other plans. He goes full parkour, leaping onto a wall, vaulting over, and crashing down to cut off the escape. The suspect groans on the ground as Joseph grabs him by the collar. When he looks up, they're stunned. The rumors were true. This dude is gorgeous. Shadow falls over them as Dr. Liston appears, knife in hand. "Why don't we have a little chat?" Liston's lips curl into a grin. "If we can't treat the disease, we can always get rid of the source." Taepyeong panics. "Hold on, we never discussed that." That's a wrap on this recap. Hit that subscribe button to help us keep pumping out awesome content. Catch you in the next one.
Make sure to subscribe, or this little guy might get sad. Seriously, if you subscribe, this dog will love you forever. So hit that button right now.